Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will early pod for the people because Hurricane Milton, it is a coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is rough. I'm obviously sensitive to hurricanes as a Cajun, so this one looks bad. This one looks really bad. Peyton was telling me, he just appeared at my house randomly, and he was telling me that this is like one of the top 5 like fastest wind speeds ever, and it's also like the quickest hurricane has gone from tropical storm to hurricane. So this thing is not messing around.
Not messing around. And thinking of everybody that's certainly on the coast and in the state of Florida that is preparing for the absolute worst. It's been a very frantic 48 hours here. Hurricane prep is weird because it is one of those things that like you get used to at a certain point. I mean, I've lived here now for 9 years, and I'm far enough inland to where I don't deal with the same thing that like my editor Chris Wright deals with living in Clearwater. My aunt and uncle are in Bradenton, and they've been here for 23 years. And you talk to them, and more times than not, when a hurricane happens, they're like kind of numb to it a little bit. And then when you hear how they are talking about this one, you're like, oh God, this could be a different kind of beast. So hopefully, if you're listening to this and dealing with the hurricane effects, or if you're still dealing with the effects of Hurricane Helene, thank you for listening. And hopefully we're going to provide some joy and be able to talk some football. You know what would be best case scenario would be is if, as my guy Gary Joe Collins said, what if Hurricane Milton, just lacks a little bit of accuracy, like a certain Joe Milton, this thing maybe just doesn't knife through Florida as it appears it's going to. It's just not quite as accurate as what many think it's going to be. I like not to make an expense at Joe Milton's namesake, but we'll take what we can get at this point.
That's why you're listening, folks.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Yeah, I hope for safety for you guys, and like I said, you got a place in Atlanta if you need it. And there's Walter.
There we go. Look, and appreciate everybody that's reached out. It's been overwhelming hearing how many people are like, "Hey, what's the plan? What are you guys up to? What are you guys going to be doing?" But yeah, we will try and power through like normal, and we'll keep everybody posted just in case we're without power or something over the weekend. Obviously, I'm going to do what I can to be able to still fulfill my obligations to this job, but there are certain things that come first in that regard. All right, plan for today. Great pod coming up. We've got 2 interviews today. We have the legend, JJ Pegues, coming up in a little bit. And we also have an interview with Sam Acho. And just a little bit of a heads up. I want to preface this by making sure that nobody's going to be fooled or anything like that or unsatisfied. But I hope to be able to have Sam on again because he doubled down on the Iron Bowl take that we both heard him say when we were literally sitting right behind him at SEC Media Days. But you'll see from the way that he answered it, he wasn't really there to get into a big back and forth discussion about it. So I hope to be able to have that at a later date. He had a very condensed schedule. So just be mindful of that. It wasn't like I had like some open-ended thing and it was just like, oh yeah, I guess I'm just going to let it sit out there. So it was great to be able to get his perspective ahead of the SEC's first edition of the Red River Rivalry. So that's coming up as well. All right. Week 7. I love this slate. And I don't just love this slate because I need a distraction this weekend from the week that is unfolding, but this slate is unbelievably good. Oh, Will's got his camera off. YouTube audience is like, Will just went dark. We've got a situation going on here. Will,
no, yeah, I was actually just throwing away some trash that I also found. But yeah, I don't know if I've even said this. Yeah, so my cat, Boo, the deaf one, actually passed away tragically and kind of randomly on Friday. And so now I'm just like, well, I guess I could leave my door open because she's not going to be screaming in the background. So maybe you guys will get a visit from Walter, who's very light-footed, does not meow as loud as her. So he's now sitting under me. So I just want to make him comfy. But anyway.
Gutted for you, by the way. And when you told me that, I think you told me that on Saturday morning. Yeah. I was thinking to myself, like, gosh, first of all, I mean, anytime a pet dies, it's horrible. It's frustrating to think about like how sudden it can be at times. And it sounded like it was very sudden on your end. And then this like immediate feeling of like, oh man, how are you going to be in the right headspace is this something that you're going to want to go through? And Will was, very, very kind to be able to come on the show on Sunday, despite the fact that, you had a lot going on and we had a shuffled schedule. So I do appreciate your flexibility and and thinking about you. Boo has made many an appearance on
Many an
this show.
appearance, yeah.
Many an
There's
appearance.
nothing that gets the blood flowing in Connor's face more than seeing the boo out of the corner of his eyes, because she was like a cannon of sound. So the listeners, unfortunately, will probably benefit from that because she was so loud. But yeah, she's my old girl, man. She was almost 15, but that's what happens when you're adopting your pets. Walter's 19. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
What?
Yeah, Walter's 19, dude. He's a mutt cat. I adopted him when he was 8 years old. They thought he was pregnant. I don't know how he's still with us, but that's what happens.
Walter's like almost older than you.
Yeah, dude. That's where I'm like, I don't know what the rhyme or reason is to this stuff, but hey, who's to say? He's still having a great time. So
holy cow, long and happy lives. Hopefully they've been able to live. All right, let's dig into it, Will. We've got a fascinating Week 7 slate, and it's the type of slate that if you're just maybe an NFL fan or kind of on the outside looking in, you're like, what do you mean? We've got one game in the SEC that's got a single-digit spread. Nuh-uh. This slate
you should have learned your lesson last week, all right? Don't make the same mistake twice.
Do not make the same mistake twice. I will let you know when it's Pumpkin Patch Saturday. This is not Pumpkin Patch Saturday, okay? So be mindful of that. The slate from start to finish is just loaded with tons and tons of storylines. So let's dig into it. Let's start with South Carolina and number 7, Alabama drop all the way to number 7. Bama is a 21.5-point favorite. The over-under I have for this one, Will, is 20 carries for Lenore Sellers. 20. Yeah. Look, in 2 games against Byron Brown, the USF quarterback, and Diego Pavia, both quarterbacks hit the 20 carry mark, and both were locked in a close game against Bama in the fourth quarter. One guy watched that slip away because he converted 2 of 18 on third down, and another watched it become the best moment of his life because he converted 12 of 18 on third down. Sellers is he's second among SEC quarterbacks in carries per game behind only Pavia, so that's not crazy to suggest that could be part of South Carolina's game plan. And I know that durability has been an issue with him so far, but I have to think, even if you're not a believer in Dow Loggins, the schemer, which I am not, I'm more of a believer in Dow Loggins, the quarterback developer, not the schemer.
My gosh, we get to see Dow Loggins versus Cade Womack.
It's the Will hate game. Well, the people need to know how much Will texts me about Kane. First of all, it's Kane Womack, I've been mispronouncing his name forever. And hand up, I'll take the L on that one. I've been doing it since he was in Indiana, and just for whatever reason, I heard people say it kind of randomly. I was like, "Is there some truth to this?" And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it is Kane Womack." The people need to know how much Will just text me about Kane Womack out of the blue, even though we disagree on this. And it's like, oh, I'm like doing hurricane prep, and I've got like 5 texts from Will about Kane Womack. The people need to know that. But yeah, we're
calling him Womack is better than what Malachi Moore called him. Starts with a B. So anyway.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm sure he would have taken Womack. But yeah, Kane Womack, as he will henceforth be known on these airwaves. But yeah, it is a fascinating game from that standpoint in terms of like, all right, what's South Carolina going to do after they just saw this Alabama defense get gashed in ways that we are not used to seeing that uniform get gashed? And does South Carolina opt to say like, all right, we're just going to give it to Lenore Sellers, Rocket Sanders? They're going to be heavily involved. We're going to force Bama to improve that gap discipline that they struggled with so much. And while I do think Bennett and Simon have been kind of nice players in the passing game for them, South Carolina still has not found that guy that can just be that number one, go get some separation, go move the sticks. They don't have a Xavier Legette emerging on that team. They don't have a 2022 Juice Wells. That guy has not emerged yet. And I don't really feel very confident that he's about to emerge this week, even with Bama's struggles in the secondary. They don't even have like an Eli Stowers who, look, he had great rapport with Pavia at New Mexico State, and he was kind of starting to emerge as a go-to target before the Bama game. This is a soul-searching game for Bama in every possible way. If the Tide spent this week just playing the blame game, and this was, no, this was your fault. Like, no, we're sitting here in the film room. You missed your assignment here. You missed your assignment there. And it's instead not really constructive. And it's more so just about, wow, I feel really embarrassed about this. I'm not going to do anything about it. We're going to know. It'll show on Saturday. It will. Malachi Moore won't be suspended for those actions. He'll be disciplined internally, according to Kalen DeBoer. After seeing that clip from Clint Lamb and his breakdown of it, I wholeheartedly disagree with that decision from Kalen DeBoer. I very much do. I know Bama players said that Malachi Moore said all the right things behind closed doors. He
also
tweeted out
posted an
an apology that may
he,
or may not have been AI. Yes, I was getting to that point.
so,
I was not going to just leave that out there. Yeah.
sorry, he had
Yeah.
an AI apology he tweeted. And there's like, it's funny because like again, this whole thing is preconceived notions about Alabama because you can see the people that are like, great kid, nailed this. You can see this is clearly ChatGPT. This guy did not try here. So yeah, I think whatever you thought going into it, you probably still think.
Probably. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's fair. I think the macro issue is far more pressing to try and establish a culture of accountability. And within that defense, Alabama doesn't have that right now. I think we can say that no matter what side you fall on, even if you were calling Feinbaum saying the sky isn't falling, which for you were in the minority if you were doing that. But
Yeah.
I do think that this is a very interesting fork in the road for the Tide. So I'm going to go with South Carolina to cover, but I'll take Bama to win 38-21 with some of those shot plays being a big difference. If Jalen Milroe can get some time against that obviously loaded South Carolina pass rush, I still like their chances of being able to do some of the things that they did against Vandy that obviously came up in a losing effort.
Yeah, I do want to say this, a pretty interesting stat that came out. I kind of have like my gut reaction after a game like that, and I kind of dig into the numbers a little bit and see if it lined up with like the numbers. And one thing that's pretty interesting, I don't know if you've seen the like, did we really get beat that bad chart with net success rate? Kind of just like play by play basis of which team was more successful. Usually, I can call those pretty well. Like for instance, A&M smoked Mizzou on almost every play, right? So they were fourth in terms of the like. Actually, they did beat them that badly. Alabama, on a play-by-play success basis, beat Vanderbilt. In fact, it was like the sixth most of a losing team overall. So like USC had the highest net success rate of a losing team. Alabama was at sixth. Okay. Like of all the games. And so what that means is that Alabama's offense played really well.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, no, I know. And it was just in big moments, right? Pick six, the fumble you can't have. Like those are the issues that Milroe has had historically. But it was 2 to 3 plays on offense that kind of, swung the game. This defense is actually worse than I thought, is what that means. Because if the offense is actually winning almost every play, but they're never on the field, basically, because your defense is just basically getting gas the entire game in via chunk play. Yeah, so I'm just super duper fascinated by this because when I see that, I thought I would see kind of a back and forth game where the Bama offense was pretty solid. The Bama defense was pretty bad, and that equaled out to about a 50-50 where 1 or 2 plays made the difference. No. Actually, the offense was awesome and the defense was so terrible that it just didn't kind of matter. So that's actually pretty fascinating. So going with this game, right, I think it really does come down to South Carolina playing within themselves. I think that whenever you have a quarterback like Lenore Sellers against the defense that, like you said, had 0 sacks against Diego Pavia last week. Sellers, I think we could argue who's harder to bring down. Sellers probably still a little bit banged up, like not fully healthy. Pavia is definitely a little bit shiftier as far as the quick twitch muscles. Smaller guys sometimes are harder to bring down, a la Johnny Manziel when he was in college. But the thing about Sellers is when you get a guy like that injured, it's tough because you want him to be able to use his legs, but you want to get re-injured. I say that to say I don't want to see some spaceship play construct by Dowell Luggins this weekend. I want to see let's let the boys have fun. Know that 2 to 3 Bama players per play are just not going to know the play call. They're not going to know where they need to be.
And you got to hit that.
You got to hit that.
Yeah.
There's no reason to do what they did last week against Ole Miss and try to do the fake punt, try to do the weird 4th down calls. Get out there, run the ball, let your quarterback be himself. Don't overcomplicate things for him. I know he's like, coming back kind of like I said. So, yeah, I think that's the key is if you can see a simplistic game plan and a confident South Carolina team, I think this team can be beaten. We've seen, we're going to be like picking Bama for the rest of the year is going to be so hard. I'm not going to pick them to lose to South Carolina for sure at this point. Now, losing 2 in a row would be like already looking at fire Kalen DeVore, which would be very funny. No, it would be funny. But again, like that's like this is kind of the 2 characters we often play, which are like, I'm the guy who's kind of reactionary telling jokes. Losing to Vandy is a joke I would never tell because it feels made up. So I just gotta keep resetting that like
it'll feel different in 2024 to lose to Vandy. I'm saying I'm on the record saying that it'll feel different to lose to Vandy in 2024. It will always feel historic because of the timing of when it happened against Bama. I will not take away from that.
Yeah, I just think it's always inexcusable if you're Alabama, right? I mean, Georgia State beat these boys. So point being, like, yeah, I don't think they're going to lose 2 in a row. I think that DeBoer's attire is probably going to be different. We could say that. I think that's the 2 things I can almost say I know here. Now, beyond that how it's going to go, I hope that, there's supposed to being conservative, right? Like, so I hope that they stay aggressive the way they did last week, but not that they overthink it. So I will say, I think this Bama offense kind of eats against this defense. They're going to come out angry. I think that Jalen Milroe is a great leader. So I would say somewhere in like the 30-10 or like the 34-14 range. I think this is going to be a convincing win for Bama because you can't lose 2 in a row at Alabama. Like we just said, I mean, you pack your bags if you lose to South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, we're having much different conversations. There's no doubt about it. If you're a Bama fan, you're holding on to hope that you saw who Jalen Milroe became after that loss to Texas and after the benching to USF. The problem is that it's going to take a whole lot more than Jalen Milroe for this team to get to the places that Bama wants to go. And I'm honestly not questioning Jalen Milroe. You can come out and play a really similar game, and on most days, you're going to win that football game. Obviously, the turnovers were crucial when they happened, but I thought he made enough plays. And I do think that against South Carolina, there are obviously ways in which they can get behind the sticks, and this could turn into a grind of a game. There's no doubt about it. If we see Dylan Stewart and we see Kyle Kennard forcing Milroe into some of these mistakes that he has been known for at times when he's been bad in his career, it's not going to necessarily be some stunning revelation. But Bama's got to have a pulse defensively, I would think, after the week that's been. If you have any pride whatsoever, you get up for this one, and you at least don't let South Carolina impose its will on your home field, one would think. All right. Texas. Number 1, Texas. 14.5-point favorite against number 18, Oklahoma. This game, of course, in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. The over-under I have for this, 3 Quinn Ewers turnovers. That's what he had in this game last year. Very well documented that it felt like the difference in that game because he had the 2 picks in the first 5 minutes, but he was pretty darn good outside of that. Like, you talk about success rate. I mean, Quinn Ewers, I don't remember like what the numbers were in this game, but Ewers had 4 incompletions the rest of this game. And I think that we all at this stage of this, of the week, we're talking about Quinn Ewers being the starting quarterback because that's everything that Steve Sarkisian has said is, barring a setback, he will be the guy. Again, we're recording this on Tuesday night, so if something happens later in the week, we will adjust. But for the sake of this here podcast, I'm going to talk about Quinn Ewers some because this is a grudge match for him. 2 years ago, he returned from a multi-week injury and dominated this game. Lights out, 49-0 game. This year, Ewers will likely return from injury and play in this game. I don't think dominating it will be a small feat. And I know that Peyton Thorne did some things well against this Oklahoma defense, but let's at the same time not pretend like 21 points was carving them up, like he was just back and forth in this shootout. Like I think Ewers, the game that he played against Oklahoma last year was better than the game that Peyton Thorne played against Oklahoma this year. I don't think that's very controversial, but I've been impressed with what we've seen from this Oklahoma defense so far. And it's been largely overshadowed by the issues that they've had on offense. But this has been a Brent Venables defense that you've hoped for. I mean, listen, they're top 25 in FBS in all these categories. Turnovers gained, yards per carry allowed, sacks per game. They're top 5, actually, in all 3 of those. And then TFLs per game, opposing third down conversion percentage, opposing 20-yard scrimmage plays, scoring defense, and the all-important yards per play allowed. That's a sign of a really solid unit that can go win you football games. And that's good. You can lean on that. Big game for Walker and Malone covering the outside. Also a big game for whoever's covering Gunnar Helm. I just feel like after what he did against Michigan, after kind of his early season emergence, I just feel like that's a guy that you're going to look up on Saturday and you'll be like, oh, Gunnar Helm, another big-time third down conversion. Or, wow, how did he get that open in the red zone? And he's going to make one of those pivotal plays that Oklahoma is going to just be kicking itself for. It's weird to think that we haven't seen Ewers start and finish a game since the Michigan game. Doesn't it seem like a long time ago?
Yeah, wow.
It was a month ago. Yeah, with the bye week and with, because obviously he started the UTSA game, but then Arch comes in because he gets hurt early. But yeah, it just feels like it's been a long time since we've seen the full Quinn Ewers. But I wonder if he's going to have to shake off a little bit of rust early. Maybe he will, but I wouldn't think that means throwing 2 picks in the first 5 minutes like he did last year. The second one wasn't really his fault. Like, he probably put a little bit too much heat on it. It's play at the tight end. Probably you'd like him to be able to make, but he's kind of getting hit as he's trying to catch it. A little bit of a tough play, but the first one was bad. First one was really, really bad. This is legacy-defining stuff that is at stake for Quinn Ewers and what I expect will be the last game that he plays in this rivalry. People forget, still another year of eligibility. He's off to the NFL after this year, barring a setback. Red River redemption on the line in this Quinn Ewers grudge match of sorts. But Brent Venables' grudge match as well, because he's in year 3 of this as well. Lose this one if you're Quinn Ewers, and no matter what happens to you this season and in the NFL, you'll hear about it from Oklahoma fans. Go ask Peyton Manning about that, right? It sucks when your rival always has that on you. But win this one, you control Texas's path to Atlanta, and soon, I'm just saying, soon, we could be having conversations about how close Ewers is to joining the Vince Young, Colt McCoy, tier 1 of Texas greats. Again, he's not there. He's not there. I'm not sitting here pretending that he is. He's not getting there unless he gets to a national championship. But if he beats Oklahoma, plays for a national title, you better believe he'd be worthy of those conversations after the situation that he walked into. He walked into a 5-7 team, a talented team. Obviously, Sark is a great offensive mind, and his surroundings have been tremendous, so that's part of it. But being the guy that's actually showed up and been everything you could have hoped he could be in these big-time games. And if he continues to do that, like, we will be having those conversations. So it's super tempting to go Oklahoma here to at least cover because of how much I really do like this defense. I cannot emphasize that enough. But I'm going with Texas because I think that Texas defense is going to continue to feast on what's expected to be a pretty one-dimensional Oklahoma offense, TBD on the receivers that they get back. I hope for Michael Hawkins' sake that he gets some of those receivers back. But I think the takeaway from this one will be, wow, we need to start talking more about this Texas defense. That's a defense that could be a driving force for a national championship team. So I'm going 28-10 Texas.
Yeah, you know what's funny about this one is that I'm going to go ahead and give another touchdown to Texas, and I think that we see it very differently, but the end result doesn't end up being very different. I am very fascinated, and I'll get into this in a second, by this Tennessee offense. I do think after seeing what Arkansas was able to do last weekend, it does give me a little bit of pause talking about Oklahoma's defense. Given, talking about them in like the elite company, right? Talking about them in the very, very good company versus like the solid company. And to your point, I know that, the quarterback situation, not great. Things are complimentary. That being said, that's not changing anytime soon. The receivers getting healthy isn't changing anytime soon. The Texas defensive coordinator, has he done enough to get the pronunciation? PK. Okay, that's what I was going to say. He might have some...
Kwiatkowski.
What's up?
Pete Kwiatkowski.
Okay.
I struggle with that one. That's
one's hard. This might be the game that causes us, like Amaliava, to learn his name. And I think that's kind of one thing we're sleeping on here is that we imagine, and not like me and you, but just as a society, right? We imagine Texas is his offensive team, Oklahoma is his defensive team. Texas is a really physical defense. And I think that when you have an offense that's been as limited as Oklahoma is, and you're not playing Auburn, I think things could get kind of rough for them. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say 35-10. Texas, I know it's a rivalry game. I'm there with you. This game was crazy last year. But if you look at the stuff that Oklahoma did well, a lot of it was Dylan Gabriel. And he's not walking through that door. I think that the offense is just night and day different, no matter who's starting at quarterback. To your point about the receivers, I think that Auburn game was just, man. I mean, Auburn should have beaten them if we want to be real about it. It's kind of, that story to me is more of how Auburn lost the game than it is about, like, again, Oklahoma did everything they needed to do. Like, obviously, huge defensive play. Like, I'm not taking anything away from them. But I think that we're talking about this team, especially this defense, a little bit differently if they do go on to lose that game. And I think that Texas is not going to let them off the hook. And then to your point about Texas, it's like, how did they lose the game? Well, you got the turnovers. I get that. Well, now we're in a place where Quinn Ewers doesn't look right. They got Arch Manning. Like if he gets out there and like, he's
that's not happening.
No. But I'm saying if he gets out there and he's like, like underthrowing stuff, if he's just not right, like if it's an injury, think if he gets hit early and he's kind of limping, like that's what they don't have to ride him the way that they do, where it's like, dude, like just get in there and hand it off, man. Like we already have someone behind you. So point being, like I think that if it's clearly a game, like if he goes in there and throws 2 picks and he's like rattled, they might give Arch a series or 2. So point being, like that's not as much of a concern is all I'm saying. It won't be like, oh, we're married to this guy, we have to do it this way. So
they're married to Quinn Ewers.
I know. I'm not saying there's a quarterback controversy. I'm just saying that if he's injured, like they have
if he's hurt and if it's very obvious, they would not be like, all right, just power through it. Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's not. I know that there's lots of quarterback controversy by like the dumb people out there. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if he's out there and just cannot throw the ball, it's like, well, we got somewhere we can go. So therefore, that becomes a lot more mitigated. Whereas Oklahoma's like, you're already on that guy. Like you're already on the guy that you didn't plan on playing. You're already on the 5th and 6th receiver. So I think that like it. I'm not going to do the would say a lot about Texas thing, but I think that this is a game where you really start to establish like you don't want this to be the Iron Bowl, right? You don't want this to be the game that Texas is up here, but Oklahoma could just kind of grab you, whatever they like every other year type vibes. You really want to, if you're Texas and you're on your peak of your program, and Oklahoma is at the floor of their program for what we've seen last 20 years, right? Since kind of the Josh Heupel era, like 2000, like before he won the Natty, obviously. I think that Texas does, and Sark is always a guy who will put his foot on your throat and show no mercy. So I think that's what we're going to see. And I'm going to be fascinated to see if this Oklahoma offense looks good. Like I said, you got him for 10 points. I got him for right about there. But if they really do start moving the ball, that's just what scares me about that, is that if their offense can't move the ball, I know Texas's can, and Texas's defense feels pretty sound. But it's a rivalry game. I'm not necessarily counting out that element of it. I'm not counting out Venables as a coach. I just don't think they have the Jimmies and Joes right now. I think guys are hurt. Yeah. I just don't think they got the dudes.
Different matchup if Oklahoma's healthy. It is, and I really wish we could see those Oklahoma receivers against Texas's secondary. I think that'd be so fascinating. Like, watch Anthony Hill Jr. Watch the way that this guy covers. Watch the way that this guy moves in space for how young he is as a sophomore. Like, there are so many people that could use an Anthony Hill in the middle of their defense, and Texas has that. Like, the thing that I can't get out of my mind when I'm trying to figure out how this game could play out is how Texas looked against that one-dimensional Michigan offense. And if Oklahoma is going to be that, and maybe they won't be. Maybe they figure something out in the bye week. They figure out more spots to be able to put Michael Hawkins in. And all of a sudden, like J.J. Hester's making more big-time plays. He was, of course, the guy who had the big-time catch down the stretch at Auburn. Like, maybe they figure some things out, and all of a sudden it's a new-look group. And we're like, whoa, who the heck is this Oklahoma team? Seth Luttrell's earning his paycheck. I don't anticipate that happening, though, against this Texas defense. I need to see it first before I can put that faith in there. But you're right, man. Like, Oklahoma fans, we dealt with this dynamic in the offseason, like, you know, as Oklahoma fans and Texas fans are like kind of, you know, figuring out like what SDS is and stuff like that. And we very quickly learn, like, when we talk about this team, Oklahoma fans will remind you very quickly they won that game last year. Yeah. Texas won the Big 12. Yeah, Texas went to the College Football Playoff. Oklahoma won that game last year, and there is a whole lot of bragging rights associated with that. For all the talk about the 12-team playoff era, rivalry games not meaning as much. Watch that one at 3:30 and tell me that doesn't mean as much.
Speaking of scary dudes I wish were on my team, Colin Simmons. Ooh, I was watching that guy's tape as a freshman. That guy is the guy I was hoping was coming to LSU. He's already got 4 sacks on the season. Yeah. Like, that's what's scary. They got the gentleman, I forgot his name. It's
Trey Moore from UTSA. They got as well that came over. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say the recruit that I sent you that plays baseball as well. He has the same name as an Alabama lineman, so I get them Jonah. What's the?
I'm blanking on it.
You know the guy, but anyway, so they have the same name, so it confuses me. But Jonah, whatever, he is going to be awesome too. So it feels like Texas is just like building a starship right now, and unfortunately, I'm not excited about it. They got these dudes coming out of nowhere. Anyway,
what a big win this would be for Oklahoma, though. If they hand Texas their first loss when Texas is number 1 like this, should be absolutely awesome. So excited for this rivalry to be part of the SEC. All right, well, Mississippi State. Number 5, Georgia. Georgia's a 33.5-point favorite. Eesh. The over-under I have for this one is 1.75 Georgia points in the first quarter. Georgia, 4 games against FBS competition, 7 total points, 1.75 points per first quarter. Bad. The good news is that Saturday against Auburn, I know why you're smiling. Don't worry. I'm going to get to it. I know. Trust me. We're getting there. Don't worry. Saturday against Auburn marked the first time that Georgia scored in the first quarter against FBS competition this year. Happened with the opening script. Yeah. How about that? Amazing what happens when you stay on schedule, when you have a nice balanced, set of plays, and the offense looks pretty good. The bad news is that Georgia did not score again until the final seconds of the first half. I think there was 14 seconds left in the first half before they scored again. The other bad news is not just can Mike Bobo dial up an opening script that actually allows Georgia to have some breathing room and not allow fans to sweat out, 3/4 of football before they can finally exhale and their heart rate is at like 160. In addition to that bad news, stop me if you've heard this before, but a key Georgia player was arrested. Yeah. Colby Young, Miami transfer, who was Georgia's leading receiver against Auburn, was arrested on misdemeanor charges of battery and assault to an unborn child. I don't know his status moving forward. I'm not going to pretend to know the ins and outs of the entire situation, but I cannot imagine there's any world in which he sees the field as Georgia's 7th player arrested this year.
Goodness.
Yeah, I'm not going to get preachy on here and tell you what everybody and their mother knows already of like, wow, how does Kirby keep allowing this to happen? Like you guys already know all of that. Okay. Like
right.
It's ridiculous at this point. You don't need us to sit here and break that down from a purely football standpoint. That is a troubling development for the best back shoulder fade guy that Carson Beck has to work with.
They just don't really, like we were talking, they just don't really have any good receivers. So, like, losing a receiver, period, if this dude had gotten injured, I would be like, oh, no.
Dom Lovett's a good player. He's a good player. He's not that go-to guy yet,
right.
though. Like, that's the – if you had told me coming into this year, because Dom Lovett, being the drum team member, right? Like, right. I like who he's been, and he was part of the reason that I'm like, all right, I think they actually have the depth that I like, in a post-Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey world. But if you had told me – we're in game 6 and that guy has had one game with 60 receiving yards so far, that's not great. That's not going to cut it. And right. I think London Humphreys, with this Colby Young expected absence, is the guy that really needs to step up. Coming over from Vandy, ironically enough. Vandy didn't need him at all. No. He's the guy who on the outside. Stay on that side. You're good. You want to beat Alabama State. Yeah, we don't need it. Vandy lost their top 2 receivers because Will Shepard went to Colorado, Will. And they did that.
Diego Pavia said, I'll call my old number. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it.
Diego Pavia's like, I got this guy that I played Pee Wee football at Pop Warner with in 5th grade. He can come. He could be here.
My boy. Get him in here.
Buddy, get him academically cleared. We're good to go. Look, I think London Humphreys is the guy that's really got to step up, though. We can sit here and talk about Arian Smith breakout game, blah, blah, blah. I'm sick of doing that. Dylan Bell's a great player. London Humphreys is the guy that's got to step up, all right? Like, he just has to mature and develop into this go-to guy. I know he's been banged up in the first part of the season. No excuses anymore. Need that rapport with Carson Beck to be there if Georgia's going to be a championship caliber team. I'm going to say that Georgia finds a little bit of rhythm in the passing game. Not like, hey, we're carving you up and this is just open season. But I think Mississippi State, with their ground game, with Michael Van Buren Jr., no relation to Michael Van Buren senior. I don't think, at least. I haven't dug into that one just yet. I think Mississippi State could do a couple of things that frustrate Georgia, at least against that Georgia defense, which is not in the Max Olson stop rate at this point in the season, not in the top 20, rather. Which he came out with that on Tuesday and was like, yeah, don't expect to see Georgia. Georgia does not feel like a team that has been able to get off the field when they have wanted to in ways that you always expect these Kirby Smart coach teams to be able to do. So even Mississippi State with a backup quarterback, I'm like, yeah, they might be able to run the football a little bit. I'm going to copy the Mississippi State-Texas score. I'm going to say that Georgia wins 35-13, and it's would be fitting because this is Georgia's Texas tune-up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, right? Where it's like, okay, Mississippi State, man. Like, what are we?
Year 0. It's okay. We don't judge year 1 coaches.
No. But I'm saying, like, in terms of like predicting, like, you guys got laughed off the field like it's Toledo. Got a little better against Florida. Maybe this is a team that's improving as I say that out loud. It's like, because against Texas, they played well. Like, the final score certainly like does not. For our expectations of Mississippi State, where we basically didn't even talk about them, and I was joking about founding fathers, I think they're just, weird as it sounds, I feel like they're just getting better. Maybe this is the game they get. I mean,
defensively, they were better against Texas, and they kept the Arch Manning-led Texas offense at bay until, yes, you're right, the final score was not necessarily indicative of how close that game was late in the third quarter, but defensively, I don't know that one game all of a sudden shows that, because defensively against Florida, I mean, Florida got every blade
Oh,
of
yeah.
grass it wanted in that game. So it's
Well,
tough
it's
to say.
degrees, though, right? It's like you get blown up by Toledo, right? That's like losing the insert team here. I can't use the team I usually use here. Insert team here is whatever. Can't be worse than that. Boom. Then, okay, well, you lost to Billy Napier, but it was competitive, and you're year one coach. You're Mississippi State. So it's not like the worst thing in the world. Okay, well, now you're in a ball game with Texas in like the third quarter. That's pretty crazy. So it's just in terms of improvement, I can say they're improving. Now, that being said, it wouldn't shock me if Georgia came out there and just smacked them. And I think to your point, like Georgia obviously knows that they're, first quarters have not been great. So I think this is a great team to kind of run practice against and be like, hey, if you have the athletes, which we're starting to realize, Georgia, as guys are kind of starting to get separated off and whatever, like maybe the guys that showed up aren't who we thought they were. And I'm not going to speak on Colby Young's situation, obviously, but he's not going to be in this game, hopefully. So point being, like, it's just, I think they at least are going, okay, here's the question. Here's the deal. We talked about what does Georgia do well. I would hope that whatever they would like to do well against Texas, we will see them do well in this game. How about that? Like, I don't think they're hiding the good plays at this point. I think they legitimately need to improve.
Yes,
so
that's not an excuse. Like,
oh, yeah.
I don't want to hear any of that at all for Georgia. If they come out flat in this game, it's not, they're playing a little bit of conservative. No. They need to figure out who they are.
Right.
You with that schedule, you need to figure out who you are. You're past tune-up time, right? Like, and I know I said tune-up for Texas, but like, I don't think this is a schematic tune-up or anything like that. I think mentally it should hopefully feel like a tune-up by day's end, because you shouldn't be playing in a 60-minute game with Mississippi State at this point. Yep. But I agree with you 100%. Like no excuses for another slow start. And another, like, if it's 7-3 going into halftime, like this is just who Georgia is. And people are already saying that during the Auburn game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're, that's the thing. Whatever you should be able to do, like whatever you want to do, you should be able to do it against Mississippi State. So let's just say in theory they come out and they're like, we're going to run the ball 30 times with ETN. Cool, that might work against Mississippi State. If you want to do that, you can't do that against Mississippi State. Now you can't do it against Texas.
True.
So that's the thing is like if your answer is, hey, we're going to give Carson Beck full range of motion, let him go 4 wide, let him spread it out, make lots of decisions. I think he's probably at a point in his career where you'd probably like that better than every other thing, but it goes to the point of these receivers are just kind of like not where they need to be to create separation to allow for 40 passing attempts, right? So I think it's going to be fascinating to see because, we're all saying the same thing here. Even if it's a blowout game, I think Georgia just needs to run plays that work and see the ball go in the hoop, as they say in basketball. So I think this is probably, I think I'm right there with you. It might be a little bit of a struggle first, second quarter. I think they'll hit their stride, end up with a final score that is a beatdown, but the key is you just got to get confident. I want to see, as insane as this sounds, like I want to see Georgia receivers celebrating. Like I want to see them excited to play football because it feels like everyone's just kind of locked in a phone booth right now.
I think Trevor Etienne's got his legs under him a little bit.
Yeah,
I didn't think he had that same burst early in the year, and that's why I thought Nate Frazier stood out. And I thought in that Auburn game, you saw the Trevor Etienne that Georgia fans hoped he would be when he transferred from Florida. Yep. Maybe that will be the guy that we see the rest of the season. This is still kind of a new role for him, so TBD and kind of what that workload looks like week to week. But I would expect to see that guy on the field against Mississippi State, and I would expect to see Nate Frazier playing well as well. But yes, you're right. If you can't do it against Mississippi State, you're not going to be able to do it at Texas. No doubt about it. All right, Florida. Number 8, Tennessee. Tennessee's a 15.5-point favorite. I can't wait for this one, Will.
Yep.
The over-under is 27 Tennessee points. In the last 20 years of this rivalry, Tennessee exceeded 27 points on 3 occasions. 2004, 2016, 2022. Tennessee went 3-0 in those games. In the 17 other games, Tennessee scored 27 or less and went 0-17. Mm-hmm. That's our number. That's very obvious over-under. Yep. It feels oddly appropriate, though, given the last 2 games that we've seen Tennessee play. And we were talking about this earlier, where you score 25 against Oklahoma. All right, maybe it's a little bit more conservative. You recognize your defense is winning that battle up front. You want to be more conservative. You're not airing it out. Okay, whatever. But then the 14 against Arkansas. All right. That is actually not the worst 2-game stretch of the Heupel era, because last year's 2-game stretch against Georgia and Mizzou, where Tennessee scored.
We can't stop talking about Joe Milton because I was like, I bet Joe Milton did that.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to throw Joe under the bus. I want to be nicer to Joe. I'm trying to, in honor of this hurricane. Whoa. Joe Milton, Orlando native. Like I'm trying to show respect to you. But yeah, it's hard sometimes. Look, 2 things can be true. One is that I believe Oklahoma and Arkansas will finish as two of the SEC's like 5 or 6 best defenses by season's end. Not saying that they're there right now. And I said season's end because I think Arkansas, having already played 4 games against Core 4 competition, that might be skewing some of the raw numbers that you could look at and be like, oh, they're like 9th in this metric here. But I think by the end of the season, you'll be like, yeah, I think Arkansas is one of the better defenses in the SEC. And I certainly think Oklahoma will be there as well. The other thing that can also be true at the same time, Tennessee's in an offensive funk. Mm-hmm. Okay? I think they are. I think some of that is Nico, for sure. You don't run out of bounds on the final play instead of throwing it at the end zone if you're not in a funk. That's what you do when you're in a funk. That's what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. I think some of that is the offensive line. They dealt with the left tackle deal at Oklahoma where it just felt like, man, they had no chance of being able to slow down that pass rush, and it ended up with the fumbles, and some of that is on that offensive line being fully healthy, and then the receivers not being fully healthy as well, which could still linger against Florida. Who knows the status of Brew McCoy, Squirrel White? Hopefully it's not as bad as initially feared, but some of this is also play calling. I want to see more of these design rollouts for Nico. Mm-hmm. Get him going off platform because you can do that now. You couldn't do that with Joe Milton, and I'm sorry for saying another negative thing about Joe Milton. But you couldn't do that with him. And you could do that with Nico. And
Joe Milton off platform looks like a statue being toppled in a communist republic.
What's the meme with Lil Sass like watching the draft, and he's got the beer and he's like pointing. He's like, me. Yeah. That's Joe Milton listening to this podcast. Look, I think that you can do those things instead of just like having Nico in the pocket and trusting his mental clock that it's always going to be right and he's always going to know his protections. He's not there yet. He's not. And I think some of the other issues that Tennessee has dealt with these past couple of weeks is personnel. I think as great as Dylan Sampson has been, he's awesome. I still want to, and I'm sure Tennessee fans will agree with me in this, I want to see more Deshaun Bishop. That guy has been awesome when he's been on the field. Against Oklahoma, those two guys had a combined 40 carries. Not saying that number needs to be at 40 on a weekly basis, but I do think that Tennessee needs to be a more ground-heavy team than maybe hit the occasional shot play with Thornton or Brazel, TBD on, again, White and McCoy. But in this game against Florida, I think Tennessee has to trust that two-headed rushing attack. You have to trust them to do the heavy lifting in this one. If you're Heupel and Joey Halsley, I just don't think that you can look at Florida and go, wow, UCF, they couldn't do anything against that Florida defense. So that must mean that we're screwed. Like, Gus is the guy who took over for Heupel because Heupel left. So that would be totally backwards thinking. And I hope that's not the approach for the sake of Tennessee. Like, that's not the guy that you're taking notes from. Okay. You have established yourself as the standard. You have. And right now, Tennessee's offensive standard is a bit murky. Same with Florida. Last year, Florida leaned on Trevor Etienne in this matchup. I don't know that you can lean on the ground game on the road against the Tennessee defensive front that's second in the country in rushing yards per game allowed and also second in the country in rushing yards per carry allowed. The problem for Florida is I think you need splash plays against a defense this stout, but against that pass rush, man, and perhaps a pissed off pass rush that Tennessee has, I see Mertz playing behind the sticks too much. I'm picking Tennessee to win, but out of respect for Florida's dominance in this rivalry, I'll say it's 28-17, so at least Florida covers. But, man, if Tennessee can't win this one, buddy, this is all of a sudden going to change storylines for these two programs in a hurry.
Yes. So this is my favorite rabbit hole, I think, in the world right now, and it's Tennessee's offense. That last game, so I basically just sat down in a hole over the last couple of days and tried to figure out, I'm no expert here, what Travis Williams did to just shut this offense down. Oh my gosh, that was a masterclass. So basically, from what I've seen, and again, talk to Max about this. I guess this is just my opinion. I'm not smart
Max Toscano, by the way.
Yeah,
for those
Max
who don't
Toscano.
know. Yeah.
And he's like the X's and O's guy. And basically, this goes down to my favorite defense, the 3-3-5, right? And so what Travis Williams did was he ran the 3-3-5 odd split, which when we imagine 5 defensive backs, we imagine that extra quote unquote defensive back is like a nickel back, like a slot corner that's inside. Well, his extra defensive back is a safety. And this safety against Tennessee was just kind of patrolling the field, right? And so, okay, let me go back. Whenever Heupel was at UCF. The reason why I thought he would kind of struggle in the SEC was because his teams were built to run sideline to sideline. They were quick, small teams that relied on these screens, and they weren't really punching anybody in the mouth. So when he got to the SEC, he did something super interesting that we both keyed in on here. He recruited hog mollies. He brought all these hog mollies in, right? So we talk about the D-line and how great they are. Well, one thing that's super interesting that I've realized, he runs these formations that are both super wide and super tight. So he'll have two receivers up against the sidelines, and he'll have extra blockers and like an up back in the backfield. And basically it makes the defense make decisions the entire time, where you got to be scared of this physical smash mouth run play on the inside, but then you also have to be scared of these choice routes on the outside that can be a vertical at any time. So your corners are basically on islands on the very, very, very edge of the field. Like if you think about like the Mike Leach style wide sets that are like all the way spreading the full defense out, like the origin of the spread or the air raid. There are concepts of that in there, but it's married to this like smash mouth inside run game. And what Travis Williams was able to do was to basically just keep his defense like an amoeba the entire time and not have to guess. So if you see a defensive coordinator that's guessing against Tennessee, they pretty much already lost. You got to have a base formation.
Yeah,
exactly. You got to make it. And we've seen SEC teams look like that, and to a degree. Like we saw Mizzou look like that, or sorry, flip that. We saw like who's the team last year that just like looked lost against Tennessee.
Not Mizzou. Mizzou was
not
very
Mizzou.
found.
Flip that. It was Mizzou that it was the reverse of that.
Kentucky
so maybe
looked pretty lost against them too, I thought.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, right? So, anyway, so point being, they're like, I think with Tennessee, and it's just like, because I'm so fascinated by this in picking them going forward. This game, not super interesting to me. I think they're just going to beat Florida, right? I'm not going to like do anything crazy there. But basically it comes down to, now that there's tape on this offense, do you have the discipline and do you have the personnel to prepare for Tennessee in a week? It's starting to turn into like the reverse of like a triple option, because they're so wide and they're so physical that you have to defend the entire field. Because if you can match the physicality, you bring all these guys down in the box, they just run straight. That's what they want you to do, is bring a bunch of guys into the box. Like they want you to try to take Dylan Sampson out. The other thing that Arkansas did really well is like, so basically against Tennessee, this is like the most to distill all that down. If you can bring pressure against these Tennessee hog mollies, sending four or basically just with your D-line, you can stop them.
They had three getting home in that game.
Yeah. And when you have a swamp monster like Landon Jackson, when you have those dudes up front that came to play the way that Arkansas did, you can free up more people to stop these deep routes and choice routes. They want you to blitz. That's what I'm realizing. They really want you to try to commit to stopping their run game. And the run game is basically just like a way to open up the deep pass game. But Arkansas just never blitzed, really. They blitzed, obviously. I'm not being like...
They had a couple of corner blitzes, I remember, where Nico would automatically be like, boom, that's my guy.
Yeah, dude, that film, like, if you guys want to just go back and watch that, it's such a masterclass of, like, how to stop that style of offense because, and this is where I'm going with that, I think you're so right about the ground game with Nico. They got to add a fourth dimension to where it's not just, okay, the screens, the power run game, the vertical, the choice routes. It's got to be, okay, we're going to run the ball, but it's going to be out of the pass play to where you can already tell, like, because you can see when they start to hand the ball off, that third safety was tracking the running back the entire time. He was like, bleep this. So he was like a mercenary that his whole job was just to figure out what the offense was. Oh, it's a choice route. I'm going to run across the field and go snuff that out inside. Oh, it's a vertical route. I'm going to go help underneath or over the top. So yeah, I'm so fascinated by Tennessee because if Nico can get going, we've seen him be effective, but he was just not effective against Arkansas.
It's like a boxing one. Basketball? Is it
honestly,
shades of that?
That's actually a pretty good, that's close enough, right? Because the box would be the 4 DBs, and then the one would be that like kind of rover position, and that's oversimplification, guys, obviously. But I think that we've seen kind of the blueprint. I love Travis Williams, man. That's look, another Red University with an A. Probably should have hired him instead of their guy. This is a modern defense because you don't run this defense against every team. You know what I'm saying? You can't defend Tennessee the way you defend. So the fact that he was just able to install this for like kind of across, like not a non-rivalry game. You don't see these guys all the time. It's not like it's like, one of these teams that you're always like an LSU that's like, oh, we got to know these guys. We're recruiting against them. It's Tennessee. Like we're going to have to get up and get ready for a totally different team next week. So I think I'm really interested by Arkansas, especially with Taylor Green healthy. But that being said, we're talking about Florida here. And I don't think about everything I just said about Travis Williams.
Do we think that Austin Armstrong? Yeah. Do we think that? I was going to get to that.
Yeah. So that's why I'm picking Tennessee going away. Like, let me just start there because even if Tennessee just runs the ball at the middle, I think they're going to do well against Florida.
Yeah, and if Florida all of a sudden stops these two rushing attacks, UCF and Tennessee back to back, who at the time I'm like, these are the two best non-service academy rushing attacks in the country in terms of yards per game. If all of a sudden Florida shows its pulse against those two,
Billy Napier contract extension?
Right. But the trajectory of the season is different. That changes what you're capable of doing. It changes how you're capable of handling this latter half that everybody's been talking about forever. And all of a sudden you have an identity. That's going to be so difficult in that atmosphere. It's going to be rocking in Neyland on Saturday. And I cannot wait for that game. And it's going to be, look, Tennessee fans know as well as anyone, never to assume victory against Florida. Ever. Right. But man, it's setting up very well for Tennessee to be the team that comes out just totally pissed off. Hey, we're gonna take it to our rival. Who knows though? I mean, never, ever. Like I said, never discount the possibility of a Florida win here.
I think this is kind of a handshake here where Florida fans are glad that I'm not talking about Florida here, but I will say this. You guys do have King Desmond Watson, right? And that being said, that guy can be a little bit of a matchup problem. So if your job is to stop the run and they're going to do a lot of inside this power run game, if you're smart, 7 co-defensive coordinators, you're going to not commit a lot of guys to the run and try to stop these choice routes. So that being said, a choice route requires coordination, personnel, and guys being on the same page. You guys have 7 defensive coordinators. So like, let's try to take about 1 or 2 things away from Tennessee and see if they can hit that second and third one versus trying to do everything the way that Arkansas did. But that being said, a couple of those things for Tennessee are designed to score touchdowns at every play. So if you don't cover a screen, if you don't cover a vertical route, it's gonzo. I think that last year we saw a really good representation of, why Tennessee's offense was flawed with a certain quarterback. Nico has not shown to be flawed in the same way, but I'm right there with you that he needs to start using his legs, because when they can't break out of these kind of boxes they're in, that's when we see what we saw last year. But I don't think Florida's a team to do that. I think Tennessee wins by a smooth 20. I think their offense gets on page, but again, it just gets more interesting as the year goes on because we've seen the formula.
Yep. That's a good breakdown. Really good breakdown. Good stuff, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, let's talk Ole Miss. Number 9, Ole Miss, 3.5-point favorite against your Bayou Bengals. Number 13, LSU. The over-under I have is 1,343 yards of combined offense.
You say I was stalling now. Talking about defense.
That was this game last year. That's football game / track meet, whatever you want to call it. Will,
funniest fumble I've ever seen in my life.
The Jaden sideline fumble? Yeah, that's up there.
Fumble, that.
Yeah.
1, 2.
Oh, gosh. Unbelievable. And I'm just glad that Jaden has not had several of those in the NFL just yet. And nobody is making fun of him for ridiculous turnovers. And it's just, oh my God, this guy is unbelievable.
Jameis Oregon fumble. Sorry, this would be 3rd.
Oh,
Jameis Oregon fumble was actually number 1.
Yeah, but still on the Mount Rushmore of funniest fumbles in football history. Definitely. How many years off your life did this game take last year?
So rough. I actually thought we had this game won whenever LSU started coming back, and then the defense just kept taking them.
Well, here's all you need to know about the LSU defense last year. Maybe you didn't pay attention to college football that much last year. Hey, you don't, but the people listening, maybe they do. LSU was sitting there with 49 points with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter on the road.
Yep.
And 7 minutes later, LSU was like, hey, Jaden Daniels, buddy, we're going to need you to put on your cape and go win this one. We did it again. Oops. When you put that in perspective, it makes you realize how silly it was that there were people going like, he was only 8-4 and he just padded his stats. But we don't need to go down that road. No, that was a father of 12 who was running 3 companies, what he was trying to do last year. Get out of here with that talk. I'd be surprised if this game turns into that kind of shootout. Not saying these teams won't put up some points, but
hold on, you just gave him an extra loss too. He was 10-3 last year.
Oh yeah, he was
9-3.
Yeah, 9-3. I don't know why I say 8-4, but yeah, it felt like an 8-4 team.
It sure did.
I say that all the time. Actually, I like this. That's not the first time I've said that LSU was 8-4. I've said that in several places just because if you're not New Year's 6,
felt like 6-6 without Jaden Daniels. I get it.
Yeah, that's a 4-18 without Jaden Daniels. LSU's defense is better than last year, which is essentially like saying the thing that you smelled after stepping out of a hockey locker room smelled better than a hockey locker room. If you know, you know. There is no worse smell on this earth, man. None.
I just hope this is making you laugh in this stressful time.
I used to cover the Tri-City Storm when I was in Central Nebraska, and those post-game locker rooms, I can't unsmell it. I'll never unsmell a hockey locker room. Terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss is also better on defense, in case you haven't seen. A little bit. Actually, a lot of it so far.
Yeah.
We'll get to JJ Pegues in a bit here. But when he says, I think this defensive line can be the best in college football, it is nothing to scoff at. Through 6 games so far, Ole Miss is third in FBS in scoring defense, third in FBS in yards per play allowed, third in FBS in opposing third down conversion percentage, first in FBS in yards per rush allowed, first in FBS in rushing yards per game allowed, first in FBS in TFLs, first in FBS in sacks. They've been awesome, okay? And I know we can say, the competition's not that good. They've played enough teams at this point where that's not nothing. Even if there is some regression that's expected with the latter half of their schedule and facing LSU and facing Georgia, they have done what you hoped they would do if you're an Ole Miss
to be
fan.
honest with you, man, they played like the way that Kentucky beat them was not a defensive error. It was a game that, like you said, it would make you throw your controller if you're playing NCAA. It's not like they gave up a touchdown on that play.
Yeah, I mean, they had the big play that they allowed to Barryon Brown at the end of that game, which,
of course, yeah.
I mean, ideally, you'd like to be able to get a stop there, but it wasn't like
that's the Barryon Brown experience, though. He'll drop something, he'll fumble something, he'll get a penalty, and they'll have the sickest catch you've ever seen. You're like, who's this guy?
Celebration penalty where you're just like, what? Why? What we got? We got too many guys shooting guns to celebrate things in the SEC right now. Probably. Yeah. We're getting flagged left and right, guys. Let's take some notes here and figure this thing out. But anyway, I think Ole Miss's defensive line against that LSU offensive line is maybe even a touch better than what LSU faced against South Carolina with those guys, with Kyle Kennard, with Dylan Stewart. Mm-hmm. Maybe Kennard and Stewart end up having better seasons as pass rushers, but that interior of the Ole Miss defensive line has been just outstanding.
And that's the problem with LSU. It's not the time. We talked about this against a gentleman who is now in the portal, Bear Alexander, who played well enough to make LSU look stupid, and then he got benched and put on the ground against Michigan. Yeah, I agree.
That even if Campbell and Emory Jones, even if those guys hold up on the outside and give Nussmeier time, I think it's going to be tough sledding in some of those short yardage situations for LSU. I do. Yep. It feels like this game.
Why? Because they're running the T formation in short yardage. Is that why?
Caden Durham, 5 touches.
Josh Williams is running up against the best nose tackle in football with a wing back to his right.
Dude, Les Miles somewhere would be sitting there smiling. He would, it.
Yeah, thanks.
This game feels like it come down to a situation like that. And I've been going back and forth on this one all week. I really have been. I thought I was going to go LSU, but I'm going to go Ole Miss to win 28-27. So it's an LSU cover, but an Ole Miss win. This would be Lane's biggest win since the tarmac. It would. Post tarmac, because I think 2011 beating Oregon late in the season at number 4 Oregon, I think they prevented them from going to a national championship that year, if I'm not mistaken. And then that sets it up for them to be the number 1 team in the country coming in 2012. You know the rest. But biggest regular season win since the tarmac. How about that?
We could have an ongoing conversation on what's Lane's worst loss and best win.
Right?
It's not really one answer. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, hey, I'll just be real with y'all. I remember this game 2 years ago, and I remember it was a very similar situation. Ole Miss and some job rumors. Now, that was an Ole Miss team that I believe was undefeated at that point because they managed to beat harrowing Kentucky at that point. Their biggest hurdle talked about as their biggest win at the time, and then Kentucky fell off a cliff because it was, I believe, a top. We already talked about this, but point being, I remember this game. I think that the Tiger Stadium environment is going to be massive in an SEC game. I think that LSU has had, oh my gosh, here we go again. LSU has had a bye week to prepare itself. Hopefully, will not be running as much Josh Williams out of the T formation. Nussmeier has been awesome. I mean, really awesome. And that's something, again, I'm not a homer. I'll tell you what LSU's terrible. I'll tell you how bad their defense was last year. I'll tell you what's wrong with their defense this year. Nuss is really good. And again, this is the thing I always say. It's better to compliment Graham Mertz. If you guys are saying, oh, Graham Mertz is terrible, you don't get it. Graham Mertz is locked in an insane asylum. He's actually a good player. That makes it much funnier. That's exactly Nussmeier is elevated that, where it's oh yeah, he has this great number 1 receiver who has the dumbest drops you've ever seen. He has this oh, you have this personnel, you have these great tackles, but your play calling is like somehow like a top 5 offense. But then when you watch it, you're finding yourself kind of starting to go, and you don't know why. Like, it's very fascinating what these two teams are, because again, same deal with Ole Miss. Look at Jackson Dart, look at Trey Harris, look at like the receivers they have, and they're locked in a torture chamber against Kentucky. So yeah, though, that being said, and boy howdy, have the mighty have fallen. LSU's defense is not where Kentucky's is at. Luckily, LSU's offense is, I think, a little bit better. So I would say this game is going to, as it has the last 2 seasons, come down to turnovers, right? I think that Nussmeier is he's starting to pick up that bug again. He had 2 turnovers against USA in a game that was kind of feels like the you're playing a video game and you're just kind of screwed around at the end of the game, but like he still had the turnovers against USA, right? So you can't count it out. He's really only had like, I would call it 1 costly turnover this year. You know the one, South Carolina. But that being said, Jackson Dart also has kind of done that. So I think this is actually turning into 2 decently similar teams, except you would look at the strengths being on the same side of the ball, or like an opposing, where it's like, okay, LSU's exterior offensive line. So again, I talked about Tonka Hemingway whenever, and not Dylan Stewart, whenever they played South Carolina, because I was like, hey, this is about the interior. This is not a situation where that's a good matchup for LSU, even on the offensive line, because of the interior A-gap pressure. If you got Josh Williams in there, you better have him blocking, all right? Because they need all the help.
Nolan, you're going to need it for Walter Nolan, JJ Pegues. No doubt.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is like either of those gentlemen, you can make the case is like top 5, top 1. Like Walter Nolan's nasty. Pegues is obviously like, he can do it all, right? So, and I'm talking about not just like him playing offense, but like defensively, the amount of versatility that gives them to where you don't just have like the one true nose. You have, like, I call him a nose, he's not a nose. I'm talking about A-gap pressure. There's no one in the country that's going to pressure the interior the way that Ole Miss is with those 2 guys. And again, LSU is just kind of not great at that. So, yeah, I think that it comes down to a costly turnover. I'm going to say that like Nussmeier has that kind of like leadership right now. I think that he is at least on a page with his receivers. The play calling, I think, is going to be better for Ole Miss. The receivers are a little bit better, but I think that Jackson Dart has shown that he makes some very interesting decisions whenever the game is on the line, trying to make a like hero play. And the thing about Nussmeier that's beautiful is he's not up there trying to be a hero. He's good for a turnover whenever. So like Jackson Dart has a very specific, in my opinion, situation where he becomes a turnover machine. And in Tiger Stadium, I think that favors them. But again, I'm not married to this. I could see either team winning. I could see either team winning in a blowout. Peter Burns tweeted that. He's like, hey, this could be a blowout. This could be a close game. This could be the team could win. We could see aliens. Like, and I agree. But I am going to hope and pray that this offense is real. One that has statistically somehow been better than Ole Miss's. I'm going to hope and pray that this defense knows Alexander, really big deal, can step up. And what it comes down to is pressure. And I'm going to get out of here on this. How do you feel about Ole Miss's offensive line?
I don't feel great, but I do like the fact that they didn't let South Carolina's defensive line take over that game.
Yep.
When they could have. And I feared that. 32 seconds into that game, holding penalty. Dylan Stewart just getting mauled. And they were able to kind of withstand that. It wasn't a vintage Ole Miss offensive performance necessarily. And they still, like South Carolina, still had their moments up front. But I don't feel great about the fact that I don't think they have NFL guys at the tackle spots. I don't think that they all of a sudden are this group that's going to dominate you. Like I think Swinson could definitely have his moments in this one. It could be been like, oh wow, like this LSU defensive front that we thought was going to be doo-doo coming into this year. I don't know why I said doo-doo instead of basura, but basura. Like we thought it was going to be that, and they're actually kind of better than we thought. Like who knows? But I don't necessarily think they are a game-changing offensive line. I think they do benefit from scheme. And Ole Miss fans might not want to hear that, but I don't think they have those world beaters up front.
Yeah, this is a massive, massive crossroad game for both teams, and one that Ole Miss, like we talked about, shouldn't be here, right? You lost a game that you should have won against Kentucky. But again, like we talked about, every game is a chance to get knocked out of the playoff in SEC play because you already have one loss. And if you don't make the SEC championship game, there are enough good teams.
Kind of a playoff elimination game, Will.
Every game. That's the thing. Every game for Ole Miss. Because, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Brian Kelly and the 12-team playoff. So if you're going to lose the first game, it's not a conference game, you're going to realize you're doing everything wrong. See, that's the thing about Brian Kelly. He has like hubris where it's like, okay, if he wins the week 1, he's going to keep playing bad players. But if he loses, he knows that he needs to change things. He has had a bye week. So I say that to say, if LSU has not gotten better over the past like 2 or 3 weeks, they're still the team that lost to a USC team that is not any good, as we've seen. This could be a bad LSU team. And we do not like just as the viewing public, we do not want to see that, especially wasting a quarterback like this. So as a hopeful, not only just LSU fan, but fan of college football, I hope LSU has fixed some of those things in the back end in the same way that we saw them against Ole Miss a couple of years ago, against Mississippi State in 2022, where they flipped out the tackles. We've once again seen another defensive shift, although this time it's due to injury, unfortunately. Jalen Toviano playing the star position, Major Burns back to safety. Woo, can't wait.
You're excited about that, I can tell.
Can't wait. Love having Major Burns in my last line of defense. But that being said, everything I know about this defense tells me that Jackson Dart probably will shred them. So I'm just going to hope and pray that they learn something in this bye week and pick them, because I wasn't brave enough to do that in 2022 and it ended up being the case.
Lane wins in Death Valley. All of a sudden, that Kentucky loss feels like a distant memory. It does, because I don't think Ole Miss. If you're an Ole Miss fan, you can tolerate losing this game and then tell yourself, "Oh yeah, like we can still win out. We'll be fine and get into the playoff." I think if you lose this game, you're like accepting reality. Another loss is very likely coming, and with that schedule, I don't know that they would get in at 9-3 as an at-large team with what they've faced so far.
Yes, and I will say really quick, I brought this up in the recap last time. I'm going to give Ole Miss their flowers for bouncing back against South Carolina. Like I said, they grew up. They handled business. They strangled South Carolina in a game that most of the time, Lane would have been kind of whatever, Jackson Dart would have been whatever. So I've already seen some I can see from that 2022 team, but I just hope that we all have to see the old Major Burns. So I'm going to pick LSU 31-28.
And by the way, the faking injuries, I agree with Peter Burns on this 100%. We've had people reach out and be like, "Oh, you're gonna talk about First of all, I tweet out whenever I see a faking injury thing happen, I pretty much tweet out that clip every single time. So
yeah.
And Ole Miss, I agree with PB in saying that Ole Miss is doing it so much because they got so sick of people doing it to them.
Yep.
And now they're just basically forcing the SEC or the NCAA to step in and actually do something about it. Mm-hmm. And they're just going to do it until something happens. It's oh God, I'm about to make a really gross comparison. Have you ever witnessed someone do a gallon milk chug?
This is one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done with you. Yes. Yes. Me and the boys tried that. Didn't go well.
Okay. You hit that point where you said, "I feel so ill. I can't tolerate this. I'm going to drink until something happens." You know that point.
Yep.
Ole Miss is at that point with the faking injuries. We're just going to fake them left and right. We're going to fake them on offense. We don't care. We're going to do this until we puke out all the milk that's in our stomach right now.
And the beautiful thing is, if you're Brian Kelly, you can't get mad at this because this is your exact flavor of BS, right? This is your exact. You need to adopt this. You can't. Brian Kelly cannot be the flag banner of this is nonsense gamesmanship. He's sitting there taking notes, going, "Okay, actually, I can do this too. Let's go."
Yeah. All right, let's close it out with Vandy in Kentucky. Kentucky's a 13.5-point favorite. The over/under I have for this one,
top 10 wins among them.
Of course.
The Giant Killers face off.
How crazy is that, man? How the fact that both of these programs won those games that two most surprising results, I think, of the SEC preseason so far. No doubt about it. The over/under.
JJ Weaver versus Diego Puppy.
I love it. I love it. Future guest of the show, JJ Weaver. That's going to be coming up very soon. But yeah, the over/under is 5 turnt moments for Vandy.
Come on.
To be
You've
fair,
had some fun with this one.
I don't think I can accurately describe a turnt moment. I don't think I'm built for that. Diego Pavia could do it much better than I could. He could break that down, give you all the different ways something can be turnt. I'm pretty sure last week he had at least a dozen turnt moments. I can't believe how much I'm saying turnt. But I wasn't tracking that closely enough personally, so I'll just take his word for it. You know, it's a question that actually needs to be asked. Well, how does Vandy handle success? How does Vanderbilt handle success? I don't know that I've ever said that on these airwaves. Maybe I said it after Virginia Tech. I have not said it very often, okay? I have not. How does Vandy handle being the national darling? When you beat Virginia Tech, the most diehard college football fans appreciated that because that was a Tech team that had kind of some sneaky playoff buzz. We're like, hey, all that experience they got back, they could win the ACC. I love Kyron Drones. This is a fun team, and who knows? College football fans kind of knew that. But when Vandy beat Florida in Kentucky a couple years ago, it was seen as a nice late season moment for Vandy, as well as for the people that follow this sport nationally. More so what in the world is wrong with these two first-round quarterback prospects, Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, losing to Vandy? What's going on? But beating Bama, dare I say, is attention that Vandy could never, ever dream of receiving. When Pavia and his fellow New Mexico State to Vandy crew beat Auburn last year, he had to turn around. He had to beat Rich Rod's 9-win Jacksonville State squad just to be able to earn a spot in the Conference USA Championship game. And They found a way to do that. So that's good. If you're like, hey, this Diego Pavia guy, he runs a little bit hot. All right. He's kind of already shown you that he can handle that. Yep. Probably didn't quite get as much attention for beating Auburn as he did for beating Alabama. Auburn fans, it's true. I do think right now
that was pretty funny at the time too, though. To be honest,
oh yeah,
he could be responsible for the two funniest wins in the SEC. Now that I think about that, because I was on vacation for that, and I remember being like, "Oh,
yeah." That was a wait. That's a typo. Like, there's no way that Sport Tracker has
smoke them.
They're up 21. What are you talking about? So funny. Yeah. Oh gosh. I do think that right now I have more faith in the Kentucky defensive front than I do the Alabama defensive front. How about that?
That group, myself again, bro. Come on.
That group, I thought, played really well against Ole Miss. Big reason why they won that game, of course. And honestly, played awesome against Georgia. Played better than what the final score indicated against South Carolina. I've talked about that before. I think the Kentucky defensive front is really, really good. And they're going to be a difficult matchup each and every week in the SEC. It's because of that matchup and the discipline that Mark Stoops' unit will have that I'm going against my better judgment. I'm gonna pick Kentucky. You know what? No, screw it. Diego does it again. Vandy wins 24-21. Doors all day.
Okay, first off, I know we're very close with Kentucky. I'm gonna give you guys some advice for Kroger Field. Go to your tickets sold or your tickets given away. Sort by P. Do not let more than 5 or 6 people name Pavia in this game. As far as we know, Diego was gathering the energy of his family members like a spirit bomb in Dragon Ball Z. Do not let too many Pavias in this game. There were so many Pavias in that shot. You gotta limit that. We already got too many.
They're so famous. They're so famous at this point. They're going in with an alias, like a famous person checking into the hotel. They're already
sunglasses on, still cowboy hats. They got like tape over the jersey. Yeah, we already have the entire coaching staff from New Mexico.
New Mexico State. Different.
Sorry, no. I'm talking about they're just from there. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It is family. So point being, we got to make sure that's the thing, right? You can't let them feel themselves the way they did against Alabama. That was a joke, but it is a serious point where it comes to we knew early in that game. And there was honestly, the only time that I doubted it was that quick Alabama touchdown coming out of halftime. I was like, it's good. They could start to come back because it was cut to I think within a field goal at that point. It was 23-21. And that was the point where it felt like Alabama could come back. But outside of that, you pretty much knew from the jump that Vandy came to play, with the 2 quick scores and everything. Mark Stoops, please don't puke in your shoes in this game, man. This could be also a candidate for that, where it's oh wow, are they ranked now? If they beat Kentucky,
if they win this game, they are ranked, no doubt. They'd be 4-2. They would have wins against Virginia Tech, Bama, and Kentucky. Yeah, they'd be ranked.
And so, point being, I really would like a complete game out of both teams. I think that both teams play. As weird as this sounds, I think that both teams kind of play their game. Kentucky does tend to come to be ahead, but that's the thing. Who am I going to trust in this moment? To your point, Vandegrift, the Kentucky defense is solid. Is Maxwell Hurston healthy yet?
That's a good question. We're doing this before injury reports come out. They were coming off of the bye week. He was not healthy for that Ole Miss game. Was not playing in that one. So I don't want to speculate on that. But the secondary looked really good. They had a true freshman that stepped in and played really well in that game. So I don't even know, as great as Harrison is, I don't know that that's necessarily a deal breaker for that matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, the things that they do, they lost their top 2 receivers last year at Vandy. It just straight up didn't matter. So it's not like they have one guy that you got to shut down the way that other teams do. So yeah, I do think that the thing about Pavia, I fully get your point about you could have that literal and metaphorical hangover where it's I've been partying for a week in Nashville, not going to class or whatever. I don't think you can not go to class at Vandy. Never mind. He's been getting
Johnny Manziel
on his test.
If he's really Johnny Manziel, you just
But
never
this
know.
is Vanderbilt now. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He's been getting B's on this test. That's how you are a rock star at Vanderbilt. So yeah, I think that maybe like, even though that is a possibility, the game that he plays is kind of calling his own number to a degree, which is a little bit recession proof. Whereas I feel like Kentucky can be a little bit more up and down. As crazy as that sounds, I'm kind of there with you. Now that being said, my logical brain would be picking Kentucky, but for vibes, I'm with you. I think we're on the exact same page. Logically, it should be Kentucky.
Yes.
Vibes wise, I want to see how high this Vandy thing can go. I want to see them ranked. I want to see Pavia at the White House, not for winning a natty, but for some other reason where they're just like, we love you, Pavia. Come to the White House. Like, I want to see him be a national hero. So I'm just going to pick Vandy because it'll be fun.
If Diego Pavia runs the table, could he show up on Currency next year? I won't rule it out. I won't. We're riding this train until it goes off the tracks. All right. Yeah. We just have to at this point. Fun fact about this game. My brother and sister-in-law were there when Vandy beat Kentucky in the snow in Lexington a couple years ago.
Yes.
They're going to be there. They're going to be there again on Saturday. They're not like season ticket holders or anything like that.
Yeah.
If Vandy wins on Saturday, they will have witnessed half of Vandy's SEC wins in the 2020s decade simply by driving 7 minutes from their house to Kroger Field.
Yes, you hit on the logical reason to pick Vandy is like, we've already seen this coach upset this coach in a much less logical way. That was after the Florida game, right?
The Kentucky game.
Yeah.
No, Florida was after that.
Okay.
Florida was after, yes, because Kentucky had just crept into the top, or they were in the top 25, I believe, at the time, which made the Vandy win that much more surprising. And the fact that it snowed that day in Lexington.
Yep.
Yeah. And then Florida happened the following game.
There we go. Yeah. So I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm just rooting for Vandy because it's a wild story. I know Kentucky has been great to us. I'm not dumping on them. And like I said, I've been a massive Mark Stoops respecter. I super respect their win against Ole Miss, but I just want to see Diego Pavia being selfish here.
Love it. Love it. All right. Lock of the week. Indiana did the unthinkable, Will. Not only did my alma mater clinch bowl eligibility before any SEC team. That's not a homer take. Don't get upset for me saying that. I never have been able to say that sentence, and I never probably will in this lifetime. But IU got a spread covering score in the final 3.5 minutes of that game. My emotional hedge means that I am now 2-4 in lock of the week, but that is okay because I have never been more confident, perhaps in anything in this life. UMass, 27.5 point dog at home. Their own home field. They're not playing this game at Gillette Stadium. They're playing it at home because Ryan Bamford said so against Mizzou. If you think I'm betting against Ryan Bamford's vision now, you're crazy. Here's a fun fact. The last time that UMass beat a non-Service Academy FBS team, just take a wild guess. Who was the opposing starting quarterback, Will?
Dear God, I just laughed so hard my brain doesn't work. Who was it?
Diego Pavia.
Stop.
Yep. Everything is connected. Everything.
I'm trying to calm down the laughter because I'll be hearing those reviews, but oh my goodness, everything in time is a flat circle.
It was the season opener last year, and UMass was. I remember taking note of that game. I want to say it was a week 0 game, and I was like, UMass? Frisky? Not frisky. Had a good day. Had a really good day at the office. UMass beating Diego Pavia. Look.
Something the state of Alabama couldn't do.
Right? Hang a
banner.
Ivy
is putting out an edict saying he is not allowed in Alabama.
If you don't think that's on a Ryan Bamford email blast after the week that's been, you're out of your mind. All right? He is bragging about that. Ryan Bamford is negotiating a personal raise based on the fact that UMass football beat Diego Pavia last year. There is no doubt whatsoever.
He's going to end up with Luther Burden.
Luther Burden's just going to cross over to the other side. He's like, yeah, you know what? I'm a Minuteman now. Like, how? Ryan Bamford, say no more.
He just walked into Trick's office and Trick couldn't confidently tell him no. So we talked about the UMass road trip in the preview of this game.
Well, we have talked about this so much, and if you don't, go back into the archives and listen to us talk about this matchup.
This is our Christmas. I remember wearing a Christmas thing. I was at my office, and I did we did this whole thing about that. That was a very similar podcast where I was laughing the whole time. But we talked about the UMass road trip specifically last week, talking about Mizzou, and we joked about it, not assuming. Okay, plenty of people thought that A&M could win that game. I don't think many people have thought they could beat them the third worst of any team that happened last week. boy, howdy, is this. I mean, this is a team that's already lost to a team, or not lost, but already struggled with a team from Massachusetts. Like, they're trying to go 2-0 against Massachusetts, Mizzou. So, like, I'm right there with you. I don't think they'll win. I don't think UMass will win this game, but I think it's yeah, you're talking about the spread. It's like, I've not seen anything to convincingly tell me that a Mizzou team that struggled with Boston College. Look, Vandy should have probably beaten Mizzou, knowing what we know now, because we saw that game, but it was like, wow, Mizzou's frisky. Yeah, like they should actually probably have 2 ranked wins, like top 10 wins. But that being said, I think that this is probably a pretty easy. Like, I do not think Mizzou is. I think they'll win this game, but I don't think it'll be comfy for them because they're in Mass. I don't even know where this college is.
Hadley, Massachusetts.
Thank you. I have no concept of where the Minutemen play. How do you even get there? I guess you're gonna fly into Boston, which again, Boston, rough memories. Anyway.
Yeah, look, I think you fly into Amherst, maybe. I don't know if they've got a private plane situation that's like what State College has right now that they're dealing with, where they don't have a long enough runway to be able to have the proper plane size to travel across country to USC with their equipment. I would like to think that Ryan Bamford has a different setup for the visiting Mizzou Tigers, who could have been a top 10 team had they beat A&M. They didn't come close to beating A&M, but we could have watched a top 10 Mizzou team with Luther Burden III playing football on this high school field. That is what this is. And if you don't know, watch this on Saturday. The fact that a top 25 team is playing on this field is a joke. It is an absolute joke. If Luther Burden III gets hurt in this game on this high school field that he's much too good to be playing on, send that medical bill directly to former Mizzou AD Jim Sturk, because as far as I know, he's going to be watching this game back where he grew up on the opposite side of the country in Nooksack, Washington. That's a real place. I looked it up. Maybe I pronounced it wrong. Maybe it's Nooksack. It's got to be Nooksack, but Nooksack is so much better. Yes. I looked up where Jim Sturk was born and raised. I was bored today, Will.
You've done a lot of really good work for this podcast. This is my favorite segment you've ever done. I'm just imagining a world where they cut to the UMass sideline. They got like Mark Wahlberg, Ryan Russillo is there dapping up the coaches and the players. I want to see this so bad. This is going to be a multi-view, but yeah, I'm thinking this is for the memes, for the vibes. We got to go UMass to not get smacked here.
John Calipari's up there just to troll Mizzou now that he's the Arkansas coach. You know, Marcus Camby
on the sidelines. And that's like, all 4 of the UMass people we know.
Hey, look, time heals all wounds with Marcus Camby and John Calipari. Everything is fine. Nobody, the hurt feelings are no. Ryan Bamford doesn't care about hurt feelings. If Ryan Bamford cannot get me right for lock of the week might be dead.
They're playing Ship It Up to Boston on a Bluetooth speaker as they walk out.
That should have been the over-under. Oh, this is lock of the week, so we didn't have an over-under. But the shipping up to Boston, like how many times they play that in like breaking a commercial, whole lot of flogging Molly, dropkick Murphys for this.
Oh,
one.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that takes me back to college. It really does. All right. That was fun. Let's get into our interviews. Really enjoyed chatting with JJ Pegues. Had heard nothing but great things about the Ole Miss defensive lineman / Wildcat extraordinaire. Of course, we talked about his offensive roots, and this conversation just confirmed how great of a dude he is. And then we're going to talk some Red River. We're going to talk some Texas with Sam Acho. So first JJ, then Sam. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the one and only JJ Pegues. Been a long time coming, man. JJ, before we talk about you, talk about your career, let's talk about the Allstate AFCA Good Works team. What does it mean to you to be in consideration for the Allstate Werfel Trophy?
It means the world to me, just being able to be recognized and what I'm doing in my community. And I grew up here, so it means a lot for me just to be able to give to the kids, because I know when I was growing up, I wanted that. And I just wanted somebody, that plays football for Ole Miss to just come and just make my day. And that's one thing about me. I just love seeing smiles on people's faces. And that's one thing that just keeps me going each and every day.
It's not every day that we get to see, somebody like you that's in his community that gets a chance like this to give back. And it's really cool that, you had your college career start off the way that it did. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but then to come back and be a fixture in Oxford. Like I imagine for you take an extra sense of pride in seeing, your body of work help out in the community Was that a big reason, like kind of why you wanted to come back to Ole Miss and kind of get back to your roots a little bit?
Yeah, that was a huge reason why. Just because, like I said, just wanted to impact my community and the kids that's in it, and I feel like God just placed it on my heart that I could do bigger things where back at home, and I know the grandma cooking. I always gotta get the grandma cooking too, so that was the plus too. But no, just doing the community work. Usually, I tried to do it back at Auburn, and it was just hard for me too, just because like of the place. Like I wasn't around there, but I also did some community work over there. But I knew it would have been like a more impactful me just coming back home and seeing the familiar faces when I was growing up, and just seeing the younger kids, even the older kids that's in high school now, and just seeing them and how much I've impacted their life and made them want to just continue to play football, be two-way offense and defense, and just stuff like that. So those little things really just mean the world to me. And again, that's the reason why I just keep going and just keep putting a smile on my face and trying to do it all I can before I leave here.
JJ, it's not every day that we get to see a big man touchdown in a game, much less two big men touchdowns. You put the little juke on the defender at the goal line and be able to make a miss. We'll get into your background, why that's not necessarily surprising coming from you, but did you take any heat whatsoever in the film room, on the sideline, anything like that for not running straight through that defender?
Uh so the O-line coach usually tell me, man, just put your pads down and just go bulldoze some or run over somebody. But no, I didn't take any heat. As long as I got in the box, that's all that matters. We put 6 on the board, so that's all that matters.
For anybody that's been following your career, there's just absolutely nothing surprising about the things that you can do on a football field at this point. I remember 4 years ago, I talked to Gus Malzahn, your coach at Auburn, about you. I talked to Lane Kiffin about you and your high school coach, Chris Cutcliffe. And I heard all these different things about the things that you used to do and why you were such an appropriately, I guess, athlete. It just fit you as a recruit. The cannonball package that you ran in high school. Tell
Yeah.
me about that and why you probably enjoyed that as much as anything.
So we came up with that my junior year, like the end of my junior year, and we really came up with it like on the fly. We were playing Columbus. I remember this like yesterday. We were playing Columbus. It was halftime. We were supposed to be killing Columbus. So the receivers weren't catching the ball, the running backs weren't running. So I'm like, okay, we got to do something else. So our coach dropped on the board, just big circles on the board, and then he just wrote a big JJ at quarterback. And I was like, what? I'm playing quarterback? And ever since then, we've been running that cannonball and just running downhill, and the rest is just history.
It's unbelievable to think about that. If you're an opposing defense in high school, you're like, buddy, I got 2 hours of chemistry homework tonight. Now I got JJ Pegues lining up at quarterback. I
Yeah.
got to imagine like you show those looks and you can probably see it on a defense's face of like, oh my gosh, I do not want to tackle you. Do you have any experience where that really kind of stood out?
So me and Walter Nolan actually always, because he played at Olive Branch.
Yeah.
And I played him when he was a freshman and I was a senior. And we talk about that every day about how like, bro, he would be like, oh, y'all was cheating. Y'all put a 245-pound person at quarterback, this and that. I'm like, bro, we trying to win games. Like, I mean, if that's how we're gonna win, that's how we're gonna win. But no, just seeing how like people just tried to like scheme against me, like when I was at quarterback or even at running back or outside receiver, like I don't know. I just felt like I had a lot to do, but like I always had the right Coach Cutcliffe, offensive coordinator God. Like he draws it up for everybody. But no, it was fun and I still could do it today, I feel like, but I got the defense in me too, so I just do it a little both now.
Walter get the best of you ever in high school, or were you winning those battles?
He got me one time, and I told him I'd never say this, so this is my first time I'm gonna say it. I was running, we ran the Wildcat formation, cannonball, and I got the first down. It was like 4th and 1, but like I felt the hand on my shoulder pad, and like he pulled me back behind the line of scrimmage. And I didn't know Walter at this time, so I'm like, Coach, I don't know who that big guy is, but That's the first time I felt like I was a little kid out there. But no, he did give me one time. I gave him his props, but he still won't give me my props, so that's all right.
So you talk about splitting out wide occasionally. State championship, your junior year, you made a full extension diving grab that sets up the go-ahead touchdown for you. Can you also tell the story of the time that you talked Coach Cutcliffe into wiping a field goal off the board in a scoreless game when the monsoon was coming down so
It was
that you
Olive
could
Branch,
run
yeah.
the outside fade? Oh, that was against Olive Branch.
That was
Okay.
against Olive Branch, yeah. So we just called. It was like fourth and some inches or whatever. And I remember Coach Cut was like, "Are we finna kick the field goal?" And I'm like, "No, let's just throw the fade," because it was just like packed. They was gonna pack inside. It looked like cannonball inside, but the quarterback, John Moore, was actually in the game, and I was just gonna be split out. And it was just raining so hard. And plus, I'm like, if he kick it, the wind gonna take it and whatever. So he was like, all right. So when Coach Cut told me his dad was like, after the game was like texting him and stuff like that, was like, don't you ever in your life take 3 points away like that and try to throw a fade and it's pouring down rain. And I'm like, hey, we executed the play, so it is what it is. But no, we ended up winning, I think, 10-0 that game. So he did make a field goal in the rain. It was like a 30-yard field goal. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't trust him. It was just like one-on-one, fade ball. I like my odds.
The fact that you like your odds to catch a goal line fade as opposed to a kicker kicking a chip shot field goal, albeit in difficult conditions,
It
that
was, man.
that that's unbelievable, man. That's unbelievable. I got to imagine too, like you had so many of those moments with Cutcliffe in that like you could just you guys had that rapport and you had to be able to play all the different positions that you played throughout your career because like you're still playing some defensive line as well. It's not like you're just playing exclusively on offense, but you became this guy who was just positionless and you could just do anything you set out to do. What was your relationship like with him to be able to have that back and forth where you felt like, you could tell him probably in a game, like, hey, I'd love to be able to play both sides, or, oh, maybe I'm feeling really good about this matchup here or there. Your rapport probably was second to none.
No, we felt like Belichick and Brady for real. But no, we had a great relationship, and that's why I feel like played a big factor in me like being able to move around and play different positions just because he trusted me, and I actually took it serious and came in with the extra film study with him each Sunday we had after our game, and him just invited me over. And with the kids and just eating, me and John Moore and him. So I feel like the little things we did together really just built our bond together. And still to this day, I call him, text him. I go up to the high school every now and then, and we'll chop it up. And yeah, so I feel like that bond that we created with each other really just mesh everything together and allow me and him to like just do everything within the team and just play me in different positions.
He loved you. And I remember talking to him about like a time when you would just show up at his house, like with your girlfriend and freshly baked cookies and just hang out and just be with the family. And that's super rare. And it speaks to your maturity and the person that you are. I got to imagine though, like you probably at least had some of those moments where you're watching film and he's getting on you or something like that. First of all, where did you practice in a given day in high school? Because it felt like you probably could just it would probably depend on the given week or maybe even the given matchup at certain points.
So I would usually practice at tight end. I would be at tight end all throughout practice, but like I would get like if the running backs were working like meshes or something like that with the quarterback, like I do a route with a tight end and then go running back, get a couple carries, and then I just go back to tight end, and it's just vice versa. But when the game came down to it, I usually start off at running back. And then Coach Cut, like I said, does a great job. I start off at running back, shift out to outside receiver, and then we'll just run a play like that. So I I I was a tight end. I am a tight end at heart. That's what I was. But he just moved me around. It's basically the situation. If it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and he know we can get an inside zone, and he'll put me at running back. If it's passing situation, he'll put me at tight end or something like that. And we'll probably run a dagger play or something like that, a dig. But no, I started off at tight end at practice though.
You end up doing something that I'm sure you heard from a lot in the community at the time to leave Oxford and to sign with Auburn. But I know that you had gotten last minute pitches from Saban. He came to Oxford just before signing day, and Lane, I know he wanted to be able to kind of sit down with you after he had just taken over at Ole Miss. What do you remember about those late pitches from Kiffin and Saban?
I just remember we were just actually talking about this, but when Saban came up and he was talking to me, and he said something about he brought the defensive line coach with him, and he was just talking about how good of an athlete I was and how I could play D line and impact in some ways. So like that really just shook everything up for like Bama because like my whole mindset, tight end offense. Do the wildcat, like stuff like that, stuff I was comfortable with. So then that's when Malzahn came with me, and he was just like, man, we're gonna use you as a tight end, but we also gonna use you for the wildcat, which he did. And I never gave Kiffin a chance. It was just too late. He got the job too late, and I was already deep into it. I was headed to the Mississippi Alabama All-Star game actually when he wanted to see me. So it was God's timing, and now I'm back home, which I'm thankful for. So yeah, I say it's God timing.
Okay, I gotta ask about Lane in 2020 because I when I talked to him about you, it was right after you had the hurdle in the Arkansas game,
Huh?
and that play was just probably everything that you had heard in a recruiting pitch of we're gonna line you up in the Wildcat, we're gonna let you go, and to do that as a true freshman at your size is just unthinkable, and it was a play that everybody was talking about. But Kiffin said that he was so disappointed they didn't get to meet with you, and that if you had made the decision to stick to defense in your college career, that you could probably end up being a top 5 pick as a 3 technique guy. And it was like whoa, like it was an unbelievable quote. You hit the portal 2 years after, and obviously you end up at Ole Miss where you're at now. But what was that pitch like the second time around, knowing like you already at that point at least had some sort of like not really a rapport, but you at least had some sort of foundation with Kiffin?
So that was really like it was really easy for me just because like me seeing and playing against them, like how unique his offense is and how he used people. So I was just thinking like maybe he does remember like my tight end stuff and seeing me do little things like that, and just thinking that I could play defense, I could play defensive line, but also play tight end and wildcat, which I'm playing now, and just I know he likes to win, and I seen what was going on over here, and I just wanted a part of it, and plus the community just coming back home and just giving to them. So I mean, it was a no-brainer for me just to come back home, and we're doing big things now, and we're gonna do big things later on down the road.
All that stuff, the social media stuff, the fire extinguisher, the basketball hoop on the sideline. You've been in those spots. You've seen what it's like at other places. You've seen what it's like at Ole Miss. Tell us like why that stuff, it just makes football more fun. Like it seems like it's just such a fun place to be able to show up and get through this grind of playing college football.
Yeah, I feel like Kiffin does a great job with just those things. Like we're big on just being one to know each and every day and not letting like distractions happen. And he loves to bring the juice. So like whenever we do something good, like we're gonna allow the fans to see it and them be along with it too. You know what I mean? And I know at other schools like they don't do that. They just go to the sideline and it's quiet and they just root. But like we want to show it, and I feel like it's fun and it's something different that football needs. I mean football is fun and we love to play it, so we just want to show that.
Huge matchup this weekend, obviously. Those LSU offensive tackles, I'm sure you've already looked at film of them and you've already had a chance to hear about how great those guys are on the outside, Will Campbell and Emory Jones. And obviously you deal with guys on the interior as well. But what have you seen from them so far and to make you think like this is going to be a headliner, tier one type matchup?
No, it's gonna be a dog fight, and they have a great team, great offense, great defense. But we just gotta go in and pack our defense and do what we do. We play ball, we play fast, physical, and fearless, and we just spot the ball whenever.
What's this defensive line capable of being for Ole Miss this year?
Best. I mean, that's what all we've been talking about, and we only can stop us. So when we go full speed and do what we got to do and do our job, we can't be stopped.
JJ, this has been great. I want to get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Yes, sir.
All right. We already did the first one. Who's the GOAT between MJ and LeBron? You're wearing an MJ shirt, so that was easy. So we got that one out of the way. Has Jackson Dart hosted you with his private jet NIL deal yet?
No. And I'm kind of mad, but that's okay. He got things going on, but that's all right. He hasn't though.
that time's coming. That time's coming.
Hopefully I can get on there.
Yeah. Who gets recognized more in Oxford, you or Juice Kiffin?
Maybe Juice Kiffin. Maybe Juice. That's a great question. Maybe Juice. Because Juice, he's about everybody. Everybody loves Juice. So, and I'm about everybody too, but I'm not a dog, though. Like everybody loves dogs. Like, I think Juice, no.
That's true. Everybody loves JJ though too. So don't sell yourself short.
Hand in hand. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah. What's the toughest SEC venue that you've played in, and you can include your own?
I'll say Georgia.
That's cool.
Georgia. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's your favorite thing to do on a football field?
Shoot the bow and arrow when I get a sack.
Oh, that's good. Oh, see the celebrate. It's not just the play; it's the celebration. I like that.
Yeah, I like shooting the bow and arrow because, like, usually when a lot of people would have been like, "Oh, you don't like scoring anymore" or something like that. I do like scoring, but like I done it so many times, I really ain't got it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm used to it by now. So that's why I remember Kiffin was like, "Man, you don't like celebrate like that or anything like that." I was like, I'm just kind of used to it. But when I jump over a pile or do something like that, I ain't done that in a long time since like high school. So that's when I got to get up and celebrate because I'm like, okay, I still got it a little bit.
The bow and arrow thing, if you did that after a touchdown, it'd be a little bit different. You can't have the same thing after a sack versus after a touchdown.
Got to switch it up.
Yeah. All right, last one for you. How much are you begging Coach Kiffin to be able to throw a pass?
I've been begging him since last year. So I've been begging him that since last year, but I don't know. He schemes up stuff, so I don't know. Maybe it'll come down in the future.
That needs to happen. By the time that your career at Ole Miss is done, I feel like you have earned the right. Just give JJ the ball, and you'll figure out the rest later, man.
Yeah.
This has been great. Really, really appreciate it. On behalf of Allstate Workful Trophy and everything that you're doing in the Oxford community, absolutely awesome stuff. Wish you the best of luck with everything, man.
Thank you.
I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest, a first-time guest. It is former Texas Star, current ESPN analyst, Sam Acho. Sam, tons to be able to get to with you. But first, let's talk about the Allstate Good Works team. You've got to experience both sides of this. Tell our listeners why this is so important, especially right now in this current era of college football.
Yeah, thanks so much, Connor, for having me on. Yeah, so the Allstate AFCA Good Works team is essentially a team of players, 22 college student athletes and a head coach who are recognized for their community service work off of the football field. Yes, these guys are stars on the field, but also off the field. And then they've also combined this year with the Warfel Foundation to form what's called now the Allstate Warfel Trophy. As remember, the Allstate Warfel Trophy, as it's now called, is the premier award for community service. And so now the Allstate AFCA Good Works team and the Allstate Warfel Trophy are combining to try and shine more light and shed more light on the work that players are doing in their communities. And so right now there's a list of 22 student athletes who are on the Allstate AFCA Good Works team. And out of those 22, which is selected down from 178, right, voted on by a national committee. Now you people, everyone at home gets a chance to vote for their Allstate AFCA Good Works team captain. You just go to espn.com/Allstate to vote. But also that team captain will also be the Allstate Warfel Trophy winner. And so those are great accolades, but I think the real depth, Connor, goes to the work that the players are actually doing. Gavin Sawchuk, he's a running back in Oklahoma. He spent his spring break in Hawaii helping with the fire-affected communities from the Maui wildfires. And then when he's not in Hawaii helping the fire-affected communities, he's back in Oklahoma doing different camps for kids. Think about guys like Hayden Connor, who's an offensive lineman at Texas, who's doing work for Paws for a Cause, essentially helping animals who have been abused at animal shelters. I got a chance to talk to him not too long ago, and he's like, dude, this is my passion, my goal, my desire. Malachi Starks, DB at Georgia, an all-star football player, but also a dude who does football camps for at-risk youth in Atlanta. And so these are just a few of the names of like peeling behind the curtains of, oh, wow, this is a player who just played Alabama in, this big game or the number one team. But it's like, no, dude, this guy's so much more than a football player. These guys are players who are just really changing the world.
It's awesome stuff, and getting to talk to Tebow about it and getting to talk to Werfel. It's incredible to see like what's going on and shining a light on that is really awesome stuff. And I, always love to be able to support what you guys are doing. A couple of guys that you talked about, they're going to be playing in the Red River Rivalry coming up very, very soon here. Give me any sort of path for Oklahoma to make this a game, because I don't know that a bye week is suddenly making the Sooners healthy at those receiver spots. And then again, even if they were, Texas secondary is so good that I don't know if they'd have that matchup. What's the path for Oklahoma to be able to make this a 4-quarter game and pull one out?
One quick thing before I go to the path, and you reminded me because you were talking about Tim Tebow and Danny Werfel. Just one quick thing. So I didn't you talk about the path in like big games. I didn't get a chance to. Tim Tebow and I are both, we help represent the Allstate AFCA Good Works team, and we both won the Allstate Werfel Trophy, et cetera. Tim and I never got a chance to play each other, right? They went to the national championship, and our team was right under them, and we thought we were going to go this whole kind of thing. And I admired him from afar, but I'm an outside linebacker. I want to go and sack the dude, right? But like now getting a chance to know him, I'm like, dude, this guy's real deal. I think about just real quick me going back when I was playing in like these huge games, right? Red River Rivalry or whatever, the national championship that I got a chance to play in, and Tim as well, winning one, or Heisman, all these things. It's like, yes, playing in these games were huge, and it was everything, and all those things. But dude, for me, getting a chance to win the Allstate Werfel Trophy and to be on the Allstate AFCA Good Works team, like those are up. You talk about like shelves or ladders or things that matter. Like those are things that still matter and that I still talk about. So I know I'm going to get to like the Red River Rivalry, but I just wanted to say real quick is thinking about Tim and then Danny Werfel. Dude, it was kind of like a big deal that like these big time players are playing in big time games and doing big time. I just wanted to make sure guys knew that. And so anyways, yeah, but to your point of Texas versus Oklahoma, right? You talk about it, two of the players, both teams have guys on the Allstate AFCA Good Works team. The path is going to be forcing turnovers from a rusty Quinn Ewers. That's going to be the path. Why do I say that, right? Oklahoma is one of the best teams when it comes to taking the ball away. Like they're one of the best teams when it comes to forcing turnovers. Before going into last week, I believe they had 8, which I don't know if that was number 1, but might have been number 2. They could have been actually behind Cal. Cal's like number 1, but maybe like top 5.
I think they were first. I think they were first in the country. And Auburn was like first in giving it away. Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah, because I know beforehand, 2 weeks ago, Cal was up there as well. But so that's what Oklahoma does. And yes, I get it. Jackson Arnold gets benched and trying to figure out the quarterback situation. But this is a game that it almost doesn't matter who's out there. Like this game is going to be a game regardless. Go back to last year. Texas went to the college football playoff. Texas won the Big 12. They beat Texas Tech 57-7. They go and lose, on a last second play in the Allstate Sugar Bowl. But who do they lose to in the regular season? Oklahoma. What happened in that game? Quinn Ewers threw an early interception, threw another turnover. So you talk about the path. The path is the fact that this is a huge monumental game, and so people play up to this game. But also, you have a team that's prone to taking the ball away and a quarterback that would not have had played for, 3 weeks? If you had the bye week, 1, 2, 3 weeks, going on 4 weeks almost. So that I think is not the path, but a path for Oklahoma.
Has Texas failed to meet your expectations, met your expectations, or exceeded your expectations so far?
Texas has exceeded my expectations so far. Why do I say that? Sure, you're the number 1 team and all those things, but I think the fact that Arch Manning not only came in and had success early, right? I thought Quinn was going to have success. I thought Quinn was going to have a great year. I thought the defense was going to be solid. But not only that they've won, but the way in which they've won games to me has been impressive. And doing that without Quinn, right? There might have been an expectation that, okay, Quinn Ewers might get injured and all these things. Like the last couple of years, Quinn Ewers has missed a couple games, and Arch didn't miss a beat. And of course, there's going to be a learning curve, right? But Texas has exceeded my expectations, but the test still hasn't come yet, right? Like the test is After this bye week, you got Oklahoma. Then after that, you got Georgia. Season ends with A&M, which once again, that's another big rivalry game. So far they've exceeded them, but the test still needs to be taken.
Sam, I'm going to do something that I never do, ever. I'm going to give you a chance to, if you want, walk back a take or rephrase a take, because you said on SEC Network at SEC Media Days that the Iron Bowl wasn't a national rivalry and that the Red River Rivalry was. And you said that as a Dallas, Texas native. Do you want to walk that back? Because if you don't, I'll lay out the facts, because if you rewatch the clip, like, I am the dude that is literally sitting right behind you. And I heard you say it both off air and then again on air. And I was looking at the camera just like, what in the world? Like, I couldn't believe that was said. I couldn't believe it was said on SEC Network and that you didn't get bleeped out. I mean, that in itself is kind of a miracle that happened. But explain kind of the genesis of that, and if you want to walk that take back.
Yeah, definitely. So I think two things. One, don't want to walk the take back, but I will say this. I will say this. So I got a chance to go to the Alabama-Georgia game yesterday,
yeah.
Like, to be on the field, on the sideline, like in the locker room, all of it. And that atmosphere at Bryant-Denny was amazing. Now, mind you, I played at Texas. We play the Red River Rivalry. I played at Kyle Field, A&M. It's like the loudest place I've been to. And Bryant-Denny was loud. Texas versus even A&M, to me, as a player in that rivalry, that was louder than I heard at Bryant-Denny. Now, mind you, this is Georgia. It's not the Iron Bowl. But that atmosphere had me saying, oh, wow, like, this game, when Alabama plays Auburn, like, that game could be ridiculous. So my thought or take or position is, as far as like the Red River Rivalry, Red River Shootout, like, that's hatred. Now, this, I'm realizing the Iron Bowl is hatred as well. But yeah, so anyways, so my position and my thought is that, like, yeah, it's a huge rivalry. And as I'm learning, going to SEC, going to the Alabama-Georgia game, like, dude, that's huge. But also, dude, Texas OU, it's like, even in high school, right? You talked about growing up in Dallas, Connor. I grew up in Dallas, went to not even a football school, small private school. When we played schools in Oklahoma, like, it was hatred. You know what I mean? Like, it was like interstate hatred. And so I think there's a level of that means something as well. Now, I'm sure that Iron Bowl, that Auburn, Alabama is another game as well. But part of my deal is, like, dude, Alabama's been dominating that for years. I might go back a couple years ago, and Auburn's been successful. But for me, it's like, dude, you want a rivalry? It's like, who's going to win? Who is it going to be? When last year, Texas goes to the playoff, but they lose out. Oklahoma. My deal is like, dude, Alabama, and I get it. It was fourth and 30, and Jalen Milroe with the touchdown. But for me, I'm like, Alabama's been more dominant in that conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, if you look at the national viewership numbers, like, none of it supports. And I love the Red River Rivalry and what it's become. I kind of like that it's not during rivalry week, and the fact that it's a game that it feels like a true standalone game that gets built up and all that stuff. And I love that game. So nothing I'm about to say, I don't mean to besmirch that game, but, like, the national audience still with the Iron Bowl, it's been there every year. Like, the 14-year ratings peak, like, happened last year, which not so coincidentally, like, coincides with Texas being most nationally relevant that it's been in that time, since you were there, obviously. So, like, that's the tough part. And, I think, like, if we're just talking about, like, what's a bigger national rivalry, like, the Iron Bowl struggles that Auburn has had, the perceived struggles, Auburn has still beat Alabama more than anybody else since 2010. And, like, that's kind of the crazy thing. Like, in the 21st century, Alabama only has a 13-11 advantage in the Iron Bowl. Meanwhile, OU has a 16-8 advantage in the Red River Rivalry against Texas. So, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's a tough thing to kind of say, like, oh, well, this team doesn't lack relevance, therefore it doesn't have the national appeal. But you got a ton of pushback from that, and I imagine that I'm not the first person that's had to ask you about that sense.
Yeah, no, I've got a little bit of pushback, but I still think, my position is still even, like, part of it too is, like, in SEC country, if you will, like, for me, it's like, dude, that's a huge game if you're SEC country. But even nationally, like, I think Texas OU is another big game as well.
Yeah, I think there's, nothing wrong with saying Texas OU is awesome. Like the pageantry that it's going to get in the SEC is going to be fantastic, and the fact that the SEC just gets to kind of adopt that to one of its own is going to be really fun. Real quickly here, I do want to go back. I have a question about your career before I get to some rapid fire here. You played in a fascinating time at Texas, obviously, and I've talked to your teammate Fozzie Whitaker about this. You're a part of that '09 title game, and the title game against Bama. It's 6-0 when Colt goes down. It's 6-0 when Colt goes down. Garrett Gilbert has the 4 picks. The rest is history. What do you remember specifically about that night?
Specifically, I remember Colt going down. I remember Blake getting an interception punt early in the game and us feeling like, dude, we got this game going. But also that injury to Colt definitely was not exciting. And then I remember being in the locker room and kind of the struggle of like, are we going to be able to come back? And then Garrett Gilbert coming back and finally us having a little bit of hope. And then I think there was a late fumble, or a defensive score on their end, or at least something, they got some momentum, and then we didn't end up finishing the way we wanted to. That was an unbelievable game with unbelievable players, and it was a blast.
Okay, best Muschamp story then, because I know you got a Muschamp story with him as a DC. Like we've all seen the clips of him in his early days, and I imagine getting chewed out by Muschamp is a one-of-one experience.
Yeah, no, there's a couple. I think one of them I shared at the SEC Media Day while we were there. Is I think one of them is just almost like every morning he'd be like, he was wired. Like we'd have 6 a.m. meetings, and you have an early meeting, you kind of walk in, you're kind of like, he's like ready to rock and roll at 6 a.m. It's like, dude, you better be ready too in our meetings.
Okay, let's get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This is very appropriate for you. Number 1, Terry Black's barbecue, overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
I would say underrated. Now, mind you, I have not been there, but I'm still of the old school of like, dude, Salt Lick, right? Like Salt Lick barbecue for me is the spot. Haven't been to Terry Black's yet. People still say that that's the best, but I got to try it first. So okay. I'll say over till I go and try it.
Fair. All right, let's include the other teams involved in the Red River and the Iron Bowl. What's your favorite other, or let's exclude those teams. So no Oklahoma, no Texas, no Auburn, no Alabama. We've talked enough about them. What's your favorite other rivalry to watch?
Ooh, favorite other rivalry. I think the Ohio State-Michigan game, right? They don't say each other's names, right? Like that's a team, that's a game where you all have these huge swings, right? One team has an 8-year winning streak. Next year, the team has like I think actually for a while it was Ohio State for 14 out of 16, something crazy. But that's a game that I think that I love watching.
What was your second choice behind Texas?
Oh, I didn't really have one, right? Like, and what I mean by that is like there was a lot of other places that I was thinking about, but once Texas came, it was like, dude, this makes too much sense, right? If I wouldn't have gone there, there was too much there was so much uncertainty at the other places that I had, and so it was like my mind was here, and then Texas opened up. It was like, dude, yeah, like I'm very much like, dude, when opportunity comes, you go for it.
What's your rest of season prediction for Texas? Win an SEC championship, win a national championship. What do you think's on the table?
Yeah, I think after watching Alabama yesterday, I think, or was that 2 days ago? I mean, I could see Alabama and Texas competing for an SEC championship. I think Texas makes the playoff. I could see Texas winning the SEC. The problem is, right, like, yeah, definitely make the playoff, potential national championship. But they will be tested, dude. That's the thing. They will be tested.
All right, last one for you. What do we have to do to get you to the Iron Bowl this year?
Oh man, we got to talk to ESPN. So usually it's funny. Usually I'm in studio on Saturdays or on weekends, and then this year I'm getting a chance to call games. So the fact that I was calling the UAB game in the morning, and actually drove to Tuscaloosa to watch to Alabama, Georgia, which was awesome. And so we'll see. I'm trying to figure out how to get there, how to get to Texas, Georgia, figure out how to get back to the Red River. I don't think I've ever been to the Red River Rivalry as a fan. Yeah. I've only been as a player. So those are yeah. Hopefully maybe we'll be covering that game. Who knows?
I'll talk to Amanda Brooks. I'll set up a story. I'll just follow around Sam Acho at the Iron Bowl. Like easy, done. Then it gives you an excuse to be able to go to. We'll figure it out. Yeah, gotta be able.
But I got other work too. I'll be calling the game.
That's true.
No, but Connor, I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for having me on, and even for highlighting some of the players for the Allstate AFCA Good Works team. I mean, even that rivalry, right? Like Hayden Connor from Texas, Gavin Sawchuk from Oklahoma. Like those are two guys that are. We talk about rivalries. Those are two guys that are on the teams, right? And so, anyways, just want to make sure that people know as well. Go to ESPN.com/Allstate so players can vote. Maybe not on the best rivalry, but on the players they want to be the Allstate AFCA Good Works team captain, and also who they want to be the Allstate Wilson Trophy winner.
Awesome stuff. Really appreciate it, Sam. Best of luck with everything.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, Will. Lad of the week. We have the same one. We've known what our lad of the week was going to be since last Saturday afternoon.
Yep.
Diego Pavia. What hasn't been said? I love that he tweeted out his agent's phone number.
Yep.
NIL inquiries. Dude, cash in. I was trying to think of the most Diego Pavia NIL deal. And I initially went to Jersey Mike's.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought that feels a little bit too stereotypical. That's not fair. Is there the opposite of like a big and tall store? Because he's my height, so I'm allowed to say that. I'm also 5'8". People don't realize that Diego Pavia is 5'8". But like if there was an opposite of like a big and tall store, like a Kids Gap store or something like that, like, yeah, for all the short kings out there, like there's nothing wrong with being a short king. You could beat Bama as a short king. And something like that would go super viral would be really good for him.
If he could do an alcohol, I don't think they really let college kids do that. But if he could do an alcohol,
it's
that would
funny.
be fire.
Quinn Ewers does non-alcoholic beer with Athletic Brewing Company.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure like what I know when NIL first became a thing, it was like, hey, you can't do like, you can't have like a strip club as like an NIL deal or stuff like that. And that was like laid out kind of in the beginning of it. But I don't know. It's a little bit murky. But I saw that Quinn Ewers ad like last week or something like that for that. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that he was just like sitting there in the middle of a football field drinking these non-alcoholic beers, which, okay. All right. Interesting choice. But
yeah, if we could get him in a Dos Equis commercial with the most interesting man, that would be it for me. However, it's the middle of a college football season, so I fully understand why we cannot do that.
The most interesting man in the world, the Dos Equis commercial, that doesn't exist anymore, right? Like they do the Go for Dose. That's been the big campaign.
Yeah.
Give it a
wow, this got it in 2016. Goodness, I am out of the loop.
Yeah, no, like they have the campaign with Fowler. Now every time Fowler's on the call, it's like the Go for Dose moment.
Mm-hmm.
And Diego Pavia doing that feels natural. The most interesting man in the world. Diego, here's what we need to do. Here's the NIL commercial. Whatever you're looking to do to get Diego Pavia as part of your marketing campaign, get every good piece of New Mexico in a commercial. I'm talking Jesse. I'm talking Bryan Cranston's character, who I'm blanking on his name from Breaking Bad.
Walter White.
Walter White, of course.
Yeah.
His son that you look exactly like. I've thought that forever, and I just never said anything to you for the first 9 years that I knew you.
Yeah, and then you learned that Asian tourists took pictures of me thinking I was him when I was in Australia,
which is incredible.
Really, yeah, there's some random like coffee shop or somebody's house, and just as a picture of me where they think I was that kid. Anyway,
I think that's incredible. Look, get Diego Pavia with Bryan Cranston with Jesse. Probably not an NIL deal for anything meth related.
Come on, bro.
But something New Mexico.
Clean up the laugh.
Something New Mexico related. I know I keep bringing up green chilies with New Mexico. Green chilies are very underrated. A green chili ad would play very well getting back to his roots. That's a little bit too basic, though. Somebody out there smarter than me can think of the right, perfect NIL deal for Diego Pavia.
Yeah. All you do is just make it the New Mexico Tourism Board and just have Bryan Cranston being like, let's cook, and then just cut to him cooking Alabama. That's why I'm the marketing guy here.
Oh, that's it, Will. That's it. Oh, that's unbelievable. And it's just, that video every single time you come into, and it's just playing as like a montage outside of the borders of New Mexico. Yep. You have to watch Diego Pavia cooking Alabama, but Bryan Cranston saying, let's cook. Take that however you wish. Yep. We're treating it like a football sense and not any other sense whatsoever. That's it. Brilliant, man.
Yeah, I think like I said, we got the exact same guy. I do want to see right now as I do this.
Are you
if
looking
he's
up his
still.
Heisman odds?
No, 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 no. I'm looking at his Twitter because the last time I saw his Twitter, he had like a pinned tweet of like basically his like film that was like, "Hey coaches, check me out." Oh yeah, captain each year, New Mexico State, year 2 stats, USA
Yep.
Offensive Player of the Year, 10 wins, passing yards, touchdown. Check the film. It's like recruiting film is put to the top of this guy's.
Don't go too deep into the Diego Pavia archives. A certain rival's logo may or may not have gotten some hydration courtesy of Diego Pavia. We don't need to get into that.
Cool. He's so cool. Like that's the thing. It's like we kind of saw this with college baseball last year, where it's like we have like how we understand college football, which is like much closer to the NFL than most of college football, where it's like hard to find lineups and stats and like stuff like that. Like we're kind of blending the line here as a guy with recruiting film. Get at me is beating Alabama. So like that's new. So yeah, I think we pretty much said all we can say about Diego Pavia. He's amazing. He's so fun. He's such a great interview. Love the thing with his family, wearing cowboy hats. That's super cool. I do want to give a shout out to Reese Davis, who ESPN turned from one of the most beautiful voices in sports to RFK Jr. over the course of a day. So that was pretty rough.
Not his
but
fault.
He made it.
Not ESPN's fault. They had a last minute change for that.
I know. Yeah.
It was Dave Fleming who was.
Yes,
on
and I think
last
he had like
minute.
a personal matter. I don't mean to make light of that, but just the fact that a human being was on, like we always talk about, like doing radio for 4 hours and really like what physically goes into that with like having coherent thoughts and talk. Like you guys, I would sound so stupid on here if not for Connor. Like just having to talk about anything for that long is so rough. Like think about your yappiest friend and they could not sound smart for that long. So that guy's a king. I hope that he's getting a week off, a bye week where you could just have some lozenges. But yeah, I think, man, and just if I could go Travis Williams, I could go Reese Davis, but I think Diego Pavia still on a really, really hard week for lads is.
I didn't know you could have such a gritty performance as an announcer. That was like the only thing that I made that I thought of was like how gritty that was. That Reese is changing his voice just so that he can talk because his normal voice, like you heard Herbie at the end of that game. Herbie was pushing through it, and like I've been pretty vocal. Like I think I think he's overworking himself at this point.
Yeah,
probably overworking Ben a little bit too, but that's a different subject for a different time. But yeah, Reese is like, man. All time. Like I'll look back. I look back on that with such great respect, even though he's probably like terrified that he sounded like that in front of such a national audience. But to me, that made me think even more of Reese, which I didn't think was possible.
During last year when I was 29 years old, I went to an LSU game and logged onto the podcast and you went, "Get out of here. Your voice sounds terrible." And I was like, "You're right." I yelled at a college football game for 3 hours. This is superhuman what Reese Davis is doing. So I want to shout him out. But yeah, wow. This is my team didn't play, and this is one of my favorite weeks in college football history. Probably top 5. That's pretty crazy.
Hope week 7 is just as good, folks. Hope it's just as good. Hopefully,
unfortunately, my team does play that week.
This is true. Hopefully, everybody listening to this, you will have power and you'll be able to watch college football on Saturday. Selfishly, I hope that for me as well. TBD on that, but hope everybody stays safe. And this hurricane is hopefully not as bad as it is being forecasted. But yes, hope everybody enjoys an early edition of the SDS pod. If you haven't, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.